We will be focused all on health and wellness today, which is a topic and industry that is such a high priority for consumers today and in turn brands. We have a phenomenal event with an amazing lineup of speakers coming to us virtually from across the country from brands like Nestle, Health Aid, Whole30, Headspace, Aura, Spread the Love, and Cool House. So we're super excited to have you all tuning in to hear from this amazing panel of speakers. Please remember that we're live and we would love to hear from you throughout the program. So feel free to use our Q&A widget at the bottom of the screen to submit questions for the different speakers throughout their panels, because they'll have a few minutes at the end to dedicate to answering those, and they definitely want to hear from you on what they would you'd like to hear from. So without further ado, we'd love to begin the program. So our first session of the day, we are so excited to have Liz Caselli-Michel, the Global Head of Content and Digital at Nestle, joining us to kick off today's event. Prior to Liz's time at the global headquarters in Switzerland, she led digital and content for Nestle's US communications team. Hi, Liz. So happy to have you here. And we're really excited to have moderating Liz's panel, Jeff Schiller, the Chief Revenue Officer at Group 9 Media. How are you doing, Liz? Welcome.
Great, thanks so much.
Of course, glad to have you here. Thanks for kicking us off today. It looks like we have Jeff here too, so I'll hand it over to you guys to kick off today's program and pop back in at the end.
Sounds good. Thanks, Emily. Hey, Liz.
Hey, great to see you, Jeff.
I always feel like these Zoom backgrounds, they make you look weird, but I'm supporting the brand. So health and wellness, that's what we're here to talk about. So wanted to first talk a little bit about your background, because I know Emily did a great job of sort of summarizing your role, but just sort of given your unique path and sort of prior career as an agricultural economist, like just to give everyone a sense as to how you got from there to here. And then, you know, I think we have like sort of 4 big topics that we hope to cover, we'll attempt to cover, but really building trust, global, what does it mean? Storytelling on a local level, which is sort of the natural extension of that, and then future proofing. So, but with that said, would love for you to just share the journey from agricultural economist to marketer.
Yeah, absolutely. I am eternally passionate about food. So I really started with where food comes from. And there are some crops I have a special spot in my heart for that were natural fits for Nestle as well, like coffee and cocoa, which are primarily grown in the tropics. And I was really excited to see more from the full path from the smallholder farmer somewhere like Ethiopia or Cote d'Ivoire all the way through to consumers. And so I focused first on that farmer side of the equation, but then ultimately moved over more to looking at the consumer side of the equation and how do we bring those kind of pieces closer together? How do we help consumers get to know the full path that their food takes more? And while that covers a lot of crops, I have a very special passion for coffee and all things coffee. And Nestle is now the largest coffee company in the world. So that's been one that I've been really passionate to focus on and has helped really come to life with this move. So most recently, I led digital and content for Nestle in the US. And then just about 6 months ago, I made the move to here in Switzerland to lead digital and content for that Nestle brand globally, which involves telling a lot of coffee stories, which I love.
Amazing. So it's really interesting to hear how you were able to turn your passion into a career. And I think with that, you know, when we think about as human beings, what it means to build trust, like you want someone to be genuine. And like, I genuinely feel like your passion oozes out of you relative to what you do for a living and what you're passionate about when you're not working. But when you think about doing that on an organizational level, how does building trust sort of apply to Nestle? You know, what are the marketing levers that you pull? How do you, you know, think about building trust, you know, and also setting the framework for your markets to build trust?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and particularly that perspective on that sense we have of, as people, of feeling trust in someone and being able to see that sincerity can often get lost, especially with big companies, and big brands can feel very faceless. So I would say one thing that we really try to bring to the work now, in particular on a global level, is more humans, more people that you can see and feel that from, and particularly to tell that story globally when you have a huge presence like Nestle does. More humans in more places, see more of the Nestle team in Brazil and Cote d'Ivoire and the US and the Mideast and India, and get that understanding that there are humans behind the work everywhere, and what those people are driving and their individual passions. For as much as I love to talk about that, the farm to fork food journey, I have so many colleagues who would love to talk about just the engineering of a food package, or something. You know, I would say Nestle is universally defined by being nerds. Like we're really a company filled with overly hyped nerds on every component of food. And so I think bringing that humanness forward is really important, and that's something that we try to do with that global perspective, where you can see our people everywhere, but also with a local perspective. So you see the Nestle people who are in your own backyard. So that's a huge part of it. I think also realistically, when it comes to trust, knowing that we're playing the long game, knowing that running a campaign around trust or helping people to kind of get to know the company better is not going to look like a surge in sales in DiGiorno. It's going to be a much more kind of long game reinforcement process of being really present and dependable for our communities in a way that won't be won and lost in the short term. And I think that that's something that's taken some adjustment in how we talk about that trust and brand building versus where there's really strong direct demand generation work. And with that, I would say be useful is something that we've also tried to have as a refocus, less on what do we want to talk about and a lot more on what does our audience need and benefit from for us. And that was a conversation I really particularly found really moving in 2020, where there was so much need, and running the gambit from our pet food business, talking about being home all day with your pets and dealing with separation anxiety, and having that sort of like, let's connect to where people really are and let's give them something that works for them and helps them, rather than just what we always want to say about ourselves, which won't go 100% away, but starting to reorient a little bit around, you know, more humans, long-term thinking, and really being useful to the audience.
Cool. Let's take a step back because I definitely want to dig into the sort of the application of that. But before we do, the sort of often pondered question, what does global mean? Is it everything but the US? You know, what does it mean? And what does it mean specifically for you to run a global business in 21, almost 22?
Yeah, and I think this is something that may vary, but particularly in food, you'll find big companies like ours are pretty decentralized. So really a lot is happening in our markets, in the country that you're a consumer. You're really being served by a local business, local flavors, local teams. So when it comes to what does a global role look like for us, it has a lot less to do with how am I individually, and my team is serving the American consumer, the German consumer, the West African consumer, and a lot more with actually how we're serving the US team, the German team, the West African team, and how we're creating, I hate to say synergies, but I have to say synergies between how those teams learn and engage, how we learn from each other, and kind of aren't constantly reinventing the wheel market to market, but fundamentally are empowering local markets to tell their own story and to be effective with their consumers. I can share from the research side, one of the things I've always found fascinating is when we ask people about brands that they think have a really positive impact, often the thing they most associate is, I remember, it can be a huge brand, it can be Target, it can be, often it's, I remember when there was a huge snowstorm and they handed out sandwiches to first responders. It's very like in your backyard experiences with that brand. And so we need to deliver on coming through in times of need in your backyard. but then also that's how we should talk to people, is be talking about what we're doing in their own backyard, because that's what really resonates and impacts their trust and impacts their connection to the brand. I think what we're doing on a global level, on responsible sourcing, on climate, is all really important. That's not actually what really like sticks with people and creates that longer term relationship. So number one, I think in a global role is put your local markets in a position to succeed, empower them, celebrate their wins, help them lobby for more resources, but be a resource there much more than it is executing globally. Those moments come that we execute globally when we want to execute well, but I think our effectiveness will really be a factor of how well we equip those local teams.
So if all global is local, when you're thinking about the global values of Nestle, how does sort of local marketplace consumption, because it varies, how do you think about, the spectrum of, to your point, synergies versus, thoughtful risk taking?
Yeah, I think that one thing that I've had to kind of balance out is the push and challenge, where I think that there's opportunity. I think permission for risk taking is one of the biggest challenges in large companies. Making teams and individuals safe to really try something new that could viably fail. We talk about innovation in a really positive way, but a lot of times you have to try those things that are going to fail to get to where your opportunities are. So I think that that's one of the things we struggle with most as large companies. And so when I think about what's the role that our team plays, it's how do we make that a little bit safer, a little bit more incentivized, a little bit more accessible for every team, rather than to tell them you should be using this innovation that someone else used. Because you're absolutely right. Whether it's, a platform, a format, anything in digital is not going to be a guarantee for a new audience, for a new market in a new country. So when we think there's potential, we're not going to go in and say, well, really, you should be using this format because it worked so well in Germany, so everyone's missing out if you're not using it. Really, what we're going to say is, what's stopping you? Is it the resources to produce in a new format? Is it not wanting to divert spend in case it's a worse performance for you? Where can we come in and place some resources that make that just a bit easier for you to take that risk, to have that experiment? And then also it gives them the chance to not have to go to their leadership and say, I want to take our resources and do something we're less confident in. They can actually say, look, I've leveraged additional resources. I've gotten our budget bigger because I've gotten someone else to buy in, which is a victory unto itself, no matter what happens in that program. So I think that being able to deploy resources in a way that lets teams learn something new for their local context, that lets teams experiment and builds the behavior and culture of experimentation is really one of the absolute best things that we can do in a big organization, far more than to get success because we launched on a specific platform. Is, can we teach teams how to enter a new space? Can we teach them that it's okay to not get great results out of the gate, and to still be willing to try those new things? I think there's I would rather, I'm afraid to say it, I would rather have a first year of failed experiments that moved everyone in the direction of experimentation than have a year of successes.
Well, I think when we were talking, last week, you had said something that was super obvious, but also super poignant, that even, failed experiments are results. They may not be, positive results relative to whatever you were hoping for, but they are results that then take you in a different direction. So results are results. I mean, it's pretty
it moves you forward. I think that one of my favorites is like it wasn't a failure, it was a successful learning. So it's something, when you learn something new about your audience, that absolutely moves you forward and makes you effective next time. And so that's, I think, starting to reframe in that way, that isn't about dollar for dollar, what was our ROI here or there, or did it go down, or should we not have experimented because the ROI was lower? You learn something about your audience that makes you more effective next time, no matter which platform is the right selection for you next time. So starting to sort of ingrain that way of thinking, some of that permission of experimentation, also some of the comfort in saying, we don't know this, we're behind on adoption here and here and here is, I think, a great thing to open the door to, because it will often be the reality. And I would much rather have my team model and have teams and markets be able to say, we're behind on adopting this, but we're going to get our hands dirty and experiment with it now and see what we learn. And maybe maybe we'll make a choice to go deeper on it. Maybe we'll put resources elsewhere. But I think there can be a little bit of a legacy of being afraid to say, I don't know a new platform, or our competitors are somewhere that we're not yet. But if you don't say that, you never move forward. So there is a lot of that. I think macro psychological safety, it's like one of those big team concepts, but I think it is something that you can help implement more organization wide from a global role, that you can really encourage and reward a market that comes to you and says, everybody else seems to be doing this, we're really behind, I don't know what to do with it. And I will say, thanks for diving in here. Let's look at how we build a pilot approach together. We can support you, because we want you to be able to go deeper no matter what you learn.
Totally. So on this sort of track, that we're on, you sort of kicked it off by talking about your journey with food. It's a personal thing. As we just talked about, it's also a local thing. As the global lead, how do you stay close to all of the local stories? And how do you sort of strike a balance between the local stories that people hang on to and then how they connect back to global priorities?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that we talk about as a team as well is, like, when is it appropriate for us to tell a global audience a story about one place? And we really look for some specific characteristics of those stories. But we see there are certain things that translate. So for instance, last year in Australia, our Maggie brand, which is a huge global culinary brand, created the first ever designed for food bank product. The Maggie kind of one pot hearty casserole that was designed for a food bank, that was super resource efficient, but that was really nutritionally balanced and easy to deploy and shelf stable. And there was something about that, even though it was deployed in one market, that just really struck a chord with us, and it struck a chord with audiences everywhere else. I mean, Southeast Asia and Latin America, because I think we all see, particularly after the economic disruption in 2020, but really in perpetuity, the limitations between the amount of food that we're collectively producing and what people can really access. And there's a lot there that's like, no, and there's a lot, this is where my economist side comes out. There's a lot there that's logistical. And so it really struck this chord of being like, oh, somebody is coming with a solution. Like, somebody is bringing a piece of this that is really giving families what they need, bringing something that's not secondhand, that's not lower quality, that treats people with dignity and gives them a really important meal that can bring people together. So there are these certain, like, trigger things that happen in local places that we know are part of a bigger story, and that our hope is, by giving it global attention, we're also actually inspiring more Nestle teams to take that up in their home markets as well and see what they can do to take a similar model. So a lot of it, I think, comes to what best speaks to our core and what best speaks to our audience, and how do we start translating those stories and triangulating them so that we're telling that consistent message, even when we're talking about these disparate activities in Latin America, in Australia, in West Africa.
So scary thought, the future is 2 months away, 2 months and a couple of days away. Uptake is so fast these days. And, we've talked for the last couple of minutes about supporting local messaging, supporting local trends, but also your role in challenging the status quo in those places and incentivizing risk-taking by sort of offsetting resource requests locally. Can you talk a little bit more about how you view future proofing?
Yeah, I think for us, it's very much like culture first. What do we create as the culture of the team, as the culture of the organization, and how does that kind of build in our agility? So organizing and building capabilities, having a continuous learning mindset is one that I particularly look for in digital talent, because you can have all the expertise in the world on our current platform mix and be totally missing critical things that we need in 2 years. So I think setting that expectation that nobody is an expert, everybody has to continue to invest in those capabilities, is a big part of it. Really thinking audience first, which, to be honest, is a tough adjustment, because coming in a large environment, you have a lot of internal audiences that are very present for you, and it's easy to lose track of your real audience because you're serving your internal partners first. So I think that kind of mindset shift, the culture and capabilities piece, is all you can invest in that will inherently be paying off in 2 years. Like having those kind of built-in components, and the right mindset, and really putting that proactivity on every member of the team to bring new learning opportunities, to be testing, to be sharing our learnings, which is one of the things that it can be the toughest to do in a large place, is like the number of things that we learned and are super insightful and sit in like 3 people's minds is totally like just a depressing thought. But I think building in some of those things about how the expectation of sharing, rewarding that culture of sharing insights, running micro experiments, knowing what you're trying to measure and knowing what impact looks like, are really cultural things to build into the team for future proofing, far above chasing a particular kind of platform movement, even that goes across platform. That's far and above, chasing video or interactivity, or, find format and then find format again. So I think that's what we've really tried to start identifying as a team, is what's important to us for our like real culture building, and how do we want to behave before we get to what do we want to do.
So more specifically to health and wellness, how do you feel like the landscape is changing, and where do you see it going in the coming months?
Yeah, I love watching how personalization has evolved for health and wellness, because I'm a huge like science comms person and nerd out. I really love when there's like a personal data component piece that goes through to your action. So when you're like watching your watch results, when you're watching your sleep score and like modifying your diet based on what your sleep is like after what you eat, I love the hyper personalization where it connects into data. No, I don't think that like most people are necessarily the bringing the data component. I think that's a matter of your personal mindset and personality type, how heavy you go there. But certainly what people do want is to be able to craft for their own like physiological and emotional experience around food. And so whether that's with their data inputs or whether it's with their own kind of sense of personal experimentation, I'm going to cut out X ingredient for a certain amount of time and self-assess if that's something I want in my diet or not, or I'm going to increase my plant-based components of my diet and see what happens. I think it's been really exciting to see how people personally craft there. And I'll say it's something market to market that many places are like on the same trajectory, not necessarily on the same place on trajectory. So moving out of the US, my dad has a gluten allergy, and we honestly didn't even need to account for it. We didn't need to call a restaurant in advance. We didn't need to pre-scout the supermarket, because it was so accessible to make personalized food choices around ingredients, allergies, personal preference. That's not quite where we are for my family visiting us now. It's moving that way. It's way higher availability than 5 years ago, but it is really interesting to see those different adoption curves around specific, food choices and food preferences. Not everywhere is in the same place, but I would say everywhere that I've seen is 100% moving to more choice, more availability, less requirement of planning for those things, more ability to show up on shelf or on delivery app or in restaurant and say, yeah, I do need to have an option that's low sodium and also gluten free, or I have I choose to eat plant-based and I also exclude this ingredient. I mean, that ability to really craft personally, I think is a big deal. I think it's also part of that has been really fun to see certain ingredients pick up. So having started in a lot of sub-Saharan Africa agriculture, the fact that sorghum is a huge thing in developed markets is such a kick for me now. Sorghum and teff, if I see those two things grow, I'm gonna just be delighted. So I think that hyper personalization, the deeper knowledge of ingredients, of green types, of everything is really meaningful. And I think it's a way for all of us to feel a sense of empowerment on the choices we make for our body, even when you're shorting that in other places, when can't get the sleep that you wish you could get, or your work hours extending, or your childcare hours are extending. It's something that you can make your own choices to feel better and feel confident in the impact you're having on that whole supply chain long game, and the impact you're having on your own body and on your family.
Yeah, I mean, my personal mantra is a Kit Kat a day keeps the doctor away. So,
and even
green,
in Kit Kat,
green tea Kit Kats, and cacao, and it's got all the superfoods.
100%. One of my favorite releases actually in our premium confections in the UK is a chocolate bar that uses the pulp of the cocoa pod. So it's fruit, but it's mostly designed from a low waste perspective. It's like, how do you use your full crowd and have zero waste going into this candy bar? But yes, I do also tend to say, oh, I'm having my serving of fruit.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, because when you think about health and wellness and you think about just larger sort of trends, sustainability is a big part of that, and so I love that upcycling is a part of Nestle's strategy. When you think about just outside of the sort of the future proofing and the changing landscape for health and wellness, Nestle's role is sort of a global, sort of iconic, largest food company in the world, sort of position. Like, what does it mean, to have that, sort of scale, and what are the sort of things that you look at because it does tie back to what we were talking about earlier. All of those local stories are tying back to the issues that matter to folks, whether it's sustainability and upcycling, or anything that is food insecurity, like any of the things that matter. So I think, I love your thoughts. You're in a really unique position where you can not just simply sort of say you do good, but you actually are doing good. Do you see that continuing to be a big part of the sort of fabric of the stories that you're telling locally?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think that one thing that's really cool to see on the Nestle side is there are some places we're a first mover. It's actually not the places that we have the biggest impact. We usually are not having the biggest impact where we're a first mover. We are having the biggest impact where we're going into something niche and making it mainstream. And so Nestle's plant-based food innovation is a huge one for me, that we didn't create the first plant-based burger that imitated beef well, but we created one that could actually be in every grocery store and was financially affordable for almost every kitchen. And for me, that's a really cool place to be. It's one of the reasons that I love working at a company of this scale, is because there is absolutely a role for all sizes and orientations of company in food. I think everybody is doing something really important. And a lot of times we do see smaller firms have an ability to move faster, that we envy and we try to replicate, and we invest in other innovation solutions. But ultimately, what we really bring to the table is what can you create at a scale and an affordability that it's truly accessible everywhere. And I think that that's a really exciting thing to see. And for when it comes to plant-based, there are major external impacts. If we convert, even some portion of our global consumers, if we convert one meal a week for them to plant-based, that's an insane emissions outcome. And so I think that scale piece gets really exciting when it comes to taking something that was kind of quirky and making it mainstream. When one of our releases that's been really exciting is called Vuna, and it's a plant-based tuna. And I think like the fish space is not something that has gotten that sort of high degree of care so far. It's certainly not the first ever innovation, but Vuna, and then we just kind of premiered to journalists a couple of weeks ago a plant-based shrimp that really looks like a shrimp. I had it in a stir fry. It's fantastic. And so looking at like this whole new space where it's like our oceans and our seas, and what is the role of fishing, and where do we need to counterbalance that as you have incomes going up and more populations having more seafood. And then saying like, oh, not only can we kind of venture into new territory with this, we can actually do it in a way that ultimately does it while driving affordability for families, and creates options to experiment in plant-based that maybe some families never even considered before. That I think is super exciting. So I think it's healthy for us to recognize like we'll have new areas, we'll get better at it. We won't often be the fastest or necessarily be the first, but very often we can be a huge kind of shock into the market that moves the market further and that brings more followers. With something like plant-based, I think that's really critical, knowing how diets will have to change as we see our climate change more and more dramatically.
I think that's a super critical point. For example, now we did like 600 million video views on sustainability, but the key difference that we bring to the table is similar to Nestle. How do you take small steps to make big changes? In fact, our biggest franchise around sustainability is called One Small Step. So, when you talk about sort of demystifying the brand behind the logo, I think it's incredibly important to highlight what you just said, which is like, yes, you're not the first mover, but you're the one that actually moves the market. And so I think like, as you go forward, it's certainly a local story in terms of how you're either changing local economies or local diets. But I do think, that importance, to your point of like meatless Mondays on a global level, completely reducing emissions is a story that will be told. So like, as you think about that, knowing, what we talked about at the top, where it's like, the global stories are really local. Do you foresee some of the sort of like, things like, climate change that affect the entire planet becoming more of a sort of hub spoke comms play versus what is now your role of to support innovation, to support risk taking, to support best practices, but enable and empower the local teams to tell their own stories?
I think that's true, and I think that one is very dependent on the other. So I love a German farmer who's using regenerative practices to supply herbs with Maggie. But how much would that matter if our emissions were still going up every year as a global company? It would just be cute. It wouldn't be impactful. So I think we really need to be able to say both. We need to be able to say, actually, we've hit our peak emissions per year as a company forever. We're only going down from here, and by 2050 we'll be net zero. And which is a big abstract concept, but is important. And to say, a huge part of that is how we grow our food. And here's like Thomas, who's a dairy farmer and who's radically changed how he's caring for cows and managing his inventory so that we're making dairy net zero, which is among the most carbon intensive things you can produce. So I think it really takes both to be credible, which your audience cares about is going to vary depending on their level of attention and kind of how and where you're meeting them. But I think we always need to have both pieces in play. And some of those will be a double click in for people who really care. But without having both of them, either of them on their own rings kind of hollow. You really need both pieces. The what are we doing in your neighborhood that is changing our local impact and getting our hands dirty? And how is that adding up to something that is actually going to matter for the climate long term?
So I'm going to ask one more question, and I think we have a couple of minutes left to open it up if there's any Q&As. But this is sort of for the last 18 months the most overused question. But when you think about the pandemic, you know, have there been surprises in behavior changes? Have there been things that have accelerated, things that have decelerated? Like, what's been your experience as a business leader in terms of how you sort of manage the business that, you know, from March 13th of 2020 to today?
I think on the communications front, we've had deeper conversations with our consumers because there's been time and focus on business practices, on who you are as an employer, on how you're treating your people, how you're responding in your community. There's been a depth of focus on that for me, like, really exceeded where we'd been before for most people. When it comes to the business itself and kind of food and health and wellness, I'll say I have enjoyed, I mean, also with, this is not unrelated to the rise of TikTok, but I've enjoyed the heck out of like premium at-home experiences, because I'm also a huge restaurant and cafe person, and that's like, if I'm in a new place, all I want to do is spend my time in their cafes and get to know kind of the world through their coffees. But I thought that when people went to more in-home options, and we saw stuff like Dalgona, I mean, we saw people doing 20 minutes on a lovely cup of coffee and an at-home experience. I used to joke with a friend of mine who was on the meat side that it's like, nobody buys like a Wagyu steak to cook themselves. Like, you'll mess it up. Like, you want a real professional to do that for you. But in this moment, like, people were investing differently and planning differently their in-home consumption to give themselves a really like premium, lovely experience. Whereas I think for people in my lifestyle, and I think a lot of people are in a similar place, the home food was like the just service the need food. If you really like slowed down and took your time, it was because you were out with friends. And so that notion of slowing down with food and with your food choices at home and treating it like something of value and treating your own time like something of value in that way was a really kind of special part of that transition. I know from my husband and I, it was the first time we made handmade pasta. It was honestly terrible. Like, it was way too thick and goopy, but we just never we love pasta, and we'd never tried, we'd never seen how it goes all the way, all the pieces come together. And it does give us more appreciation now, even when we're still outsourcing that. It gives us much more appreciation for like the journey that like culinary brings you on. And so I think that sort of premiumization at home was a special part of that. I think at the same time, there was also a lot more happening on affordability. And that's something that we saw as a company being like really dual pronged, like premium for your choices and affordability, like where you need to manage budget and where you're trying to be really strategic. It was really both sides at once. But I think there was something about that in-home experience change that I found really special, that I personally enjoyed, and that I felt like connective with everyone I saw doing it on TikTok.
Cool. Okay, so I'm getting the cue. The music is playing for the Academy Awards. Let's see if there are any questions. Otherwise, we are going to wrap to stay on time.
Hey guys, I was gonna say I'm the music for the Oscars for today. Me coming back in is the same equivalent. So thank you guys so much. That was such a great way to kick off today's program, and really appreciate you both being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Your day.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Well, that was such a great way to kick off today's event on health and wellness, hearing from Liz at Nestle And we really appreciate everyone who's tuning in at home. So continue to send in any questions that you all have and utilize our chat function to communicate with other marketers or folks that are tuning in as well. Really excited to introduce our next panel. So we have Charlotte Mosted, the VP of Marketing at Health Aid. Hi, Charlotte. And moderating this session is Stephen Whiteside, the managing editor and for reports and news at WARC. Hi, both
Great.
of you. How are you? Welcome.
Thanks so much,
Great.
Emily.
Good morning.
Yeah, so glad to have you guys here. I'm a huge Health Aid fan. I can never decide which one's my favorite flavor, but I lean towards pomegranate, I would say. But is that what you got? There we go. Okay, we're on the same page then. Perfect. Well, really excited to hear from you guys. So I'll hand it over to you without further ado.
Lovely. Thanks, Emily. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today. So as was mentioned, I'm Steve Whiteside, managing editor for Reports and News at WARC. We're a digital content platform that provides the latest data, evidence, and expertise to help marketers more effective. And joining me is Charlotte from Health Aid, where she serves as VP of Marketing. So Charlotte, I was wondering if we could start our conversation just with a brief introduction about you and your role at Health Aid at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I am the Vice President of Marketing at Health Aid. I've been here almost a year, so really, really exciting. Previous to this, I was at Palm Wonderful working on, the pomegranate juice business. So had beverage experience for about 5 years. And prior to that, I was at P&G. So, but I find that, the learnings across feminine care and beverage surprisingly are similar sometimes when you're doing CPG marketing. Here at Health Aid, it's a full scope of marketing. So we have we have traditional brand marketing within the department, as well as PR, creative development, and we even just added a consumer insights arm. So a really full 360 approach to marketing at Health Aid.
Great. And as you mentioned, you've been there about a year, which means you joined mid-pandemic, which is a strange time to start a new job. So I was wondering if that presented you with any particular challenges or maybe even opportunities to look at things from maybe a fresh perspective.
Oh, it was fine. No, I think there's both internal challenges as well as, things that we were reacting to with the consumer, but the team had already been a lot, ahead of that, as the pandemic had been at least, 6 months in. So, internally, it's hard to get to know your team. You're all working remotely, and there were a lot of new team members. So what had happened prior to even me getting there is the Health Aid team had really looked at the change in consumer behaviors. I mean, I really applaud the agility and the responsiveness of everyone there, looking at how patterns were changing and being so agile to recognize, okay, 5% of consumers used to buy their stuff online, and now 15 or 30 are buying their groceries online. So we need to change. We need to pivot. And so that had already been in place, but that meant there were not a lot of new people and a lot of new ways of working. Also, had shifted from the 2 years prior, having done a ton of events and sampling and liquid to lips. And now you can't do any of that in the pandemic. So the team was already pivoting, and then I came to kind of help and make sure that was, just steer the team continually in that direction. But it was already happening when I got there. And so it's been a real year of absorbing the change, living with it, reacting, looking at what we're doing and seeing if it's working. And I'm happy to say it is working. So it's been a real joy.
We're going to come back to some of the changes you've had to make a bit later, but I was wondering if we could start with talking about who Health Aid's core consumer is, because I think that's a really interesting slice of the health and wellness market. So how does health and wellness maybe fit into their personal routines, their buying habits? And I guess as a bit of a run-on question, how do you go about sort of getting in touch with them and connecting with them on a daily basis?
Yeah, this is a question that I think we ask ourselves every single day, as good marketers do. And it's kind of funny even to think about a core consumer, because there are certainly your kombucha enthusiasts, and we call those the healthiest. It's not a fancy word, but these are the wellness warriors. They could tell you so much about what kombucha has inside of it, why they drink it. They probably started drinking it 7 years ago. They have their favorite flavor. They love ginger. They shop at Whole Foods. They are, in the major metro areas of LA, San Francisco, and New York. They are very health and wellness attuned. They keep those practices as a part of their core life. They're going to farmers market, trying to eat whole ingredients. They're doing yoga, they're doing CrossFit. They're very attuned to their bodies. And that is our healthiest consumer. Now that's our heavy user. But what's fascinating is that there is a huge long tail of one-time kombucha triers. And that's really another part of our consumer. And we're trying to learn about that cohort and understand, what is it about kombucha that made you try it once, and what is it that made you walk away? And they may be the healthiest in other ways in their life, but for some reason, kombucha, they've not crossed over. And so those are the people we're really focused on winning, because our core consumer, they're very well versed in kombucha. They have their favorite flavor. They know what they're doing with it, and they have a little bit of a routine. So we can learn from them and learn what drew them to the brand and to kombucha in general as a category. And then that's what we're trying to glean in order to win this next cohort that's dipped their toes in, but they're not quite there. And also people that are curious. We know that over 50% of people don't even know what kombucha is, which is fascinating, right? Because we can be a little bit in our kombucha bubble and our health aid bubble of knowing we know everything. Oh, they don't, and of course people know what kombucha is, but that's because we live in LA, right? We live in this part of the world that's very health and wellness minded. There's a huge runway to share the benefits of kombucha with everyone else.
You talked about those two consumer groups of maybe the one-time triers or the curious. Did you notice that there was an increase maybe in those groups as COVID hit? Because it feels like that focus on health and wellness would naturally lead more people towards drinks like kombucha, where you do have those established health benefits.
Yeah, that's been, I think, something that has been a great tailwind for us, is just the increase in overall health and wellness. We know that, over 70% of people are now looking for their food to be, their food in their diet to be a key way to manage their health, which sounds somewhat obvious to some people, but actually that's a huge increase versus several years ago. This idea of food as medicine, food as preventative care is growing and growing, and it's largely due to the pandemic. People are realizing, you see articles around vitamin C, vitamin D, elderberry, and now fermented foods and gut health. It's a growing awareness, and luckily, I personally find so much value in working for a brand that's on the right side of history, right? We're trying to help improve that and share that news as well. So we certainly do see more and more people coming into health and wellness, and as well in kombucha. They're coming into health aid more. I would say one of our biggest challenges is just the rise of functional beverage in general, especially as you look at the more natural foods stores. Kombucha is now not the only beverage that you can drink to receive a health benefit. So it's not the only functional beverage out there. So we're seeing that there's other players trying to encroach on this trend, and it's a space grab right now.
I'm going to talk about how you're responding to the space grab in a minute, but I was wondering, just before we move off to consumer, do you think it's because we hear a lot about younger consumers being more interested in health and wellness? Do you think it is a demographic thing, or is it a psychographic thing? Maybe age doesn't matter, or is it a bit of both?
Yeah, I think it is a bit of both. And what's fascinating is that you see this intergenerational exchange happening, right? So many millennials and Gen Z are living with their parents or are in strong connection with their parents. And so you see this intergenerational influence where the younger generation might be health and wellness oriented, and they're introducing it to the older generation. But also just with the freedom of information and how much we have at our fingertips now, I do think it's a general psychographic trend of everyone having the ability to learn and examine their behaviors that have, they're contributing to their health or not. So I would say it's almost like a grand health awakening. That's what COVID has been, is a grand health awakening for almost everybody, where you're looking at your choices, you're looking at how am I supporting my body with the things that I do, and how can I bolster it for the future. So I don't think that that's a demographic thing. I think that's a total shift.
I think definitely makes sense. Now, earlier this year, probably tapping into some of that shift, you launched a new brand identity and a major new marketing campaign as well, based around gut health. Maybe to start with the brand identity piece of it, could you maybe walk us through some of the changes you made there and maybe a few of the insights that led you to that process?
Yeah, no, I mean, so right when I had joined and they were finishing it up, the team had embarked on a huge endeavor to understand the consumer and to understand kombucha relative to other beverages with the consumer. So a really awesome delve into consumer insights. And what we found was so fascinating that kombucha consumers, different than any other beverage, don't buy the brand or buy the category based on taste or flavor. They buy it for the health benefits. And this is so different than anything else they buy, even juice, right? Like juice, soda, sparkling water, anything else. Those, they're buying that for refreshment, for flavor, and yet for kombucha, they're buying it for function. So that's a real unlock for us, because what it showed us is that the way to make sure that people come in is that they know the health benefit. So, that then built a lot of what we did to the new label. The other thing is, like I mentioned earlier, we still know that a lot of people are unaware what kombucha is. And there's this stigma against it too, amongst the mainstream, of people thinking it's for the hippy dippy, yoga person that's, only shopping at Whole Foods. Well, kombucha is mainstream now, and we wanted to help consumers see that it's mainstream, approachable, that it's for them. It's not just for this super granola person that's been drinking it already for 10 years. So, one of the things that we did is we added here a descriptive line, and it's now says bubbly probiotic tea for a happy gut. And if you kind of look, this compared with this is a little bit of a smile. That's one of those cues, those unconscious cues that we added to the pack to try and make this feel much more friendly and approachable. So bubbly probiotic tea for a happy gut, that tells you what it is, right? Get your probiotics with kombucha. It'll make your gut happy. And then, the happiness imbued in the label is another aspect of it. We also had these characters that weren't working hard enough for us, so we brought them closer to the front of the pack. And we expect to be doing a lot of fun things with them next year in our marketing, just to bring to life that bold and bubbly personality. We realized that our package wasn't cueing who we are as a brand, which is this rebellious, optimist, bold, and bubbly brand. And so that's what we wanted to do, is make sure those things were more aligned. Another huge part of the package redesign was to help with selection at the shelf. So many of our flavors are awesome, but with just, in our previous label, it was mostly a white background and, some colored text on the bottom for the flavor. We realized that we could ease selection and really bring to life that appetite appeal and make this totally craveable by bringing the color really out in the label.
That's a lot of work for sure. And I think I want to touch on something that you just mentioned. You may have slightly answered this, but you're also investing in independent clinical trials as well to prove the connection between kombucha and gut health. And how important is that sort of evidence for you to build a brand and maybe even to build the wider category as well?
Yeah, I mean, we feel like it's super foundational. It's a long-term play. It's not something that you can do easily. Research takes a long time. And it's one of those things that kombucha's been around for thousands of years. The health benefits are widely known, but to be able to actually show that there's a study that connects our brand to the health benefits that we want you to receive, that is an unlock for us. And we know that we're just so passionate about health aid and what we can do to improve people's lives that we actually are so curious. We want to make sure we have the proof, even though, I mean, anecdotes and all of the research about the ingredients are really strong, right? So we know that drinking healthy acids, fermented foods, living bacteria is all super helpful for your gut. So there is a ton of evidence around how your gut health can improve your overall mood, well-being, immunity, sleep. So many things in your body rely upon your gut. Over 90% of your serotonin is made in your gut. Like, that's incredible. Your immunity starts there. It's fascinating. Your skin, right? If you have a skin problem, you probably have a gut problem. It all starts in your gut. And so that evidence is there. But what we need is, and what we would love is to be able to show just how health aid specifically impacts those vectors. And I think it's a real testament to our commitment to gut health that we're even studying it, because it's not a need to have in the industry, right? It's not a need to have. There's a lot of kombucha brands not doing clinical research, but for us, it's important for us to further this field of studies so that consumers really understand, the benefits of drinking the beverage.
A question in the Q&A, which for me as a humanities graduate is already too complicated, but I'll see if you know more than I do. So from Eric Tash, he's asking, how important is stressing gut balance versus the pre or probiotic qualities of health aid drinks in order to grow penetration and loyalize consumers?
Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to read this as well.
So I guess it's the messaging around gut balance or messaging around pre-probiotic.
I think, to be honest, we are learning about that balance as well, right? So we look at other industries and we look at something like yogurt. And when you think of yogurt, you think of probiotics. You don't necessarily think of gut health. That's interesting, right? But people know that they're eating yogurt for probiotic benefits that will help their gut. We have seen a 600% rise in searches on gut health since 2016. So it's just going up and up and up. And the literature is becoming more robust around what your gut does for the rest of your body. So we're trying to strike that balance ourselves of talking about pre or probiotics, depending on the beverage we're talking about, and gut health. I think job one is tell people about probiotics because that has the most awareness. And then job two is gut health and all of those things that it does for your life. So it's dependent on the medium and where we're meeting consumers as well. So sometimes we don't have enough space to tell that full story, and then other times we do. So we're continuing to play around with that. And the nice thing is with a really predominant digital media plan, you can actually see a lot how that's working. And we do find probiotics helps a ton.
That's going to feed in quite well into my next question, because your marketing campaign itself that you launched with the brand update this year had a large educational component, and I think that's a really interesting thing around kombucha. So, what messaging are you hoping that consumers take away from your campaign, and maybe how did your creative strategy work to make sure that those messages were the ones getting through?
Yeah, no, I mean, this was a huge creative challenge as we embarked on the campaign this year. One of the biggest thing is that we wanted to bring to life the health benefits and yet remain bold and bubbly and full of life and personality and approachable. So how do you do that? How do you talk about something super clinical and health oriented, but still bring it to life? And what we unlocked was this idea of the gut gaze. And bringing to life the story from the point of view of the gut, which was very different than how, most brands are talking to you. It's not just, hey, drink this bottle. It's really bringing to life the gut and the role that the gut has in your overall life. So, and there's also this beautiful component of follow your gut. And what does it mean when they say follow your gut? And it's much more than just your gut instincts. It's really your gut as this gateway to overall health and happiness, which really connects to our mission and connects to everything we believe as a brand. So it was a big creative challenge to do that. And then, yes, adding on those educational components was another aspect. Now, we were careful to do that and to market those to people that had already been exposed to our main message. And, they were already versed in kombucha so that we could only share those with people that are maybe middle or bottom of funnel. And again, how do you bring to life the gut in a fun way? So, if you've seen them, we have 3D live animations of things that are kind of going on in the gut, but then it turns into a happy face, because we're not biologists over here, right? We're not trying to show you the anatomy of your gut microbiome. We're just trying to show you the role that it plays, and anthropomorphizing it and bringing it to life and hearing from the actual gut was a fun way for us to do it.
Definitely, I agree. And it was supported by a digital campaign, as you mentioned, that I think was aiming to reach something like 50 million households. So what were some of the main channels you used in doing that? And if you have an impression that at this stage, what are some of the most impactful ways that that's worked out?
Yeah. So, what was fascinating, we delivered the campaign across all of the main digital platforms. So, not only in social media, but also in YouTube. And then we've even, played around with new spaces like TikTok, et cetera. And some in streaming, obviously OTT, CTV. So we played around with a lot of them. What was fascinating is that our 30-second actually drove much more engagement than our 15-second. And so we learned a lot about storytelling. We learned a lot about how bringing consumers in through the storytelling aspects was really appealing, because I think it's the first time in my career that I've seen a 30-second outperform a 15-second. And so that's been a really strong learning for us is when you're taking on a story of this endeavor, how do you need to kind of walk through it and engage the viewer? So it's been really interesting to see. And yeah, 50 million households. We hope you've seen it. And we will continue more next year for sure.
And obviously there's that balance you've got to strike between reaching new households, potential new consumers, and then you've got that core audience as well that's really engaged. Is there a risk at all of slightly alienating the sort of kombucha fans and early adopters, or do you think that they're kind of with you for the ride, whatever happens?
Yeah, those core consumers, I don't feel we're alienating them. We're always thinking about them, right? We don't want to alienate them. We want them to continue to love health. They're really valuable for our business. And so we try to do everything to kind of strike the balance of meeting them where they're at and telling them more. Even with those consumers, we've done a lot of research with them. We ask them about kombucha. There's still so much runway to go for them to fully understand. Our consumer insights manager, she's got great experience, and we were talking, and in other categories, you ask people why they drink or why they eat something, they have an answer, and if it's a well-established category, over 65% of the people can tell you that same answer. They'll tell you the same answer. With kombucha, it's not. So we still have people drinking, some of them for it tastes good, some of them for probiotics. I think this is good for me. But that's a smaller percent than we'd hope. We would hope to see so many more people having a very clear, concise answer, even amongst that loyal consumer. So it just shows you that even though this category is pretty established, it's been around for 20 years. GT started a lot earlier than we did, but we've been around for 10 years. There is so much room to grow in terms of reinforcing to our core consumer while also bringing new people in. And so we love our core consumer. We never want to alienate them, but we also have other tools to engage them. So in addition to our broad awareness campaign, we have also built a whole suite of tools to keep our current consumer really into the brand and into Health Aid, and to build that affinity even stronger. Because those consumers are really valuable. They're going to the store to buy kombucha 21 times per year. I mean, I'm one of those. I'm an addict, so I get it. It's okay. No judgment there. No, it's great. We love everyone to drink this daily. I do. And so with that core consumer, we want to build those loyalties over time. And so in addition to our broad awareness campaign, we've done a ton this year to build tools to keep that current consumer.
What sort of tools can you do to build that loyalty, if you don't mind asking?
Yeah, so I mean, this year we've done SMS for the first time. We've got a huge email campaign with over 150,000 subscribers. We've revamped our website, added functionality with rewards, and I think, and then also an organic social, right? We have over 170,000 followers. And so we're really keeping those consumers in our world through our content. If you go onto the Health Aid organic social page, you're going to see a lot of fun stuff there. We try to keep up with the times, as well as Pulson with more information and educational content. And then offering, priority deals and promos to those that are in our realm and in our universe is one way, as well as, just constant stream of information, keeping you in that Health Aid family. So that's a real component to what we've been doing.
You mentioned you're relaunching your website there, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit more in depth as well, because that's always a pretty major undertaking. And it seems like the shift you made to focus on gut health and maybe give people a bit more of an insight there. What were some of the steps you took there to help people maybe understand health and wellness and kombucha a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, this really has been, when we looked at this endeavor to become so much more focused on gut health. Previously to 2021, Health Aid had been a fun, bold, bubbly brand that really was about, enjoying life. You brew you, drink kombucha, and that was really where it was. And it wasn't about the health benefits. That insight that we found that consumers drink kombucha very differently than any other beverage, that they drink it because of the health benefits, meant that we had to change everything about the brand, not only the packaging, not only our marketing, but any way that a consumer was interacting with it. So that included the website. And we also knew that, focusing on DTC and focusing on e-commerce with the changing shopping behaviors, it was going to be important to have a really robust website that met them where they were, that gave them that information and helped that shopping journey happen more smoothly. So that's what sparked the total revamp of the website. And the health content was so important for us to have there. And it's something that we're going to continually work on. Anyone that's done a website knows that it's maybe a never-ending journey to be able to have all of the information there that you want. And so we're continuing to do it. But if you go in, you can see the Gut Health 101, prebiotics versus probiotics, and those aspects of the site will only get more robust. We know that the gut has such a pivotal role to play, like I said, in immunity, skin health, energy regulation, mood, not only digestion. People think it's about digestion, right? That's what everyone kind of thinks your gut is about. It makes sense. That is the role it plays as well, but all of those other factors go way beyond digestion. And so it was up to us to bring that to life and to continue to bring that to life.
Beyond kombucha, you've also launched some new products or relaunched some products recently. So maybe we could start with Health Aid Plus, which launched last year. Could you tell us a bit about what this new product line is hoping to achieve and maybe how it fits into the portfolio strategy more broadly?
Yeah, and so I would say this part of our portfolio truly does speak to that core kombucha consumer. They're already in kombucha, but within kombucha, there's a ton of flavor and variety seeking. People are looking for the coolest new flavor, and they're looking to amp up their health in any way they can. So Health Aid Plus really entered in a moment where, like I've mentioned, with the trends that were happening with COVID, where everyone's looking for that extra plus up to their health and wellness choices so that they can get more bang for their buck and get more from everything they eat or drink. And so Health Aid Plus is meeting them where they were if they're already a kombucha drinker. So we launched with 7 different need states and options for consumers to get their kombucha benefits, but with a little bit more. And each of the items has added adaptogens or supplements to help achieve those goals. And at a premium price point, you kind of understand, well, they've added L-theanine for my mood, if you're thinking about the happy item. So it makes sense that that's there. We've learned that some of these have really resonant benefits, and then some of them are more occasional and consumers are dipping into them only occasionally because they're maybe not looking for that benefit from kombucha. So we have learned a lot in the year that proposition has been on the marketplace around how functional and mood states can be somewhat niche, right, compared to the overall applicability of kombucha. But things like belly reset and immunity, that's what consumers are coming to kombucha for anyways. And so this line has done a great job of showing people you can get even more of what you're looking for when you buy Health Aid Plus.
So it sounds to me like that's almost an additive to their buying habits. You're not cannibalizing one with the other. You're giving them an extra option for, as you say, particular need states or wants.
Yes, and that's exactly the idea behind it. Is that it's a trade up and a potential extra occasion for consumers when they're in the kombucha category.
And you've also relaunched Health Aid Pop, and that seemed like maybe a more mainstream way to get kombucha in people's hands. But I don't want to put words in your mouth there, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But that seems like an interesting addition to the portfolio too on that side of things.
Yeah, Health Aid Pop. What we've learned, and this is again, Health Aid Booch Pop had launched last year in June, and we learned and watched how it was doing in the marketplace, and then embarked on a ton of consumer research to dig deeper. And what we learned is that there are some consumers, it was really confusing, to be honest, as a proposition, calling it Booch Pop. Is it kombucha or is it pop soda? And we learned that we've already got a great kombucha product. Consumers don't need kombucha. What they are looking for is function, but also with great flavor. And so by repositioning this as pop and really reworking the formula, we're now meeting them where they're at, because this is the part of our portfolio that's very different than kombucha. With kombucha, we talked about how consumers are really looking for those health benefits first and foremost. They'll accept the vinegary, strong flavor of a kombucha and then eventually love it. They will, I promise. After several tries, it's an acquired taste. For some people, they love it right away. But with pop, we don't want to give them any hurdles. They want their health benefits, but they also want flavor. And there's a huge segment of the population that's looking for that. And so we saw this growing trend of what we call the healthy-ish. So with kombucha, it's the healthy-ist. With pop, it's the healthy-ish, right? They're not looking to be focused on their health 24/7. They're not trying to optimize and tweak and watching every calorie they eat. They just want to make a few better choices in the day. And they want you to make it easy for them. We know that so many people are walking away from CSD. Everyone, that's a huge thing that's happened over the past decade, and it's only continuing. As they leave soda, they're looking for better for you options. They don't want artificial ingredients, but they also loved soda for the taste. And so how can we deliver something that gives them the benefits and the flavor? So that's what we really, really focused on this year with moving from Booch Pop to Pop, and how do we work it to meet those needs? So Pop is the answer. It's not kombucha. It's a prebiotic soda, and it's for a happy gut. So it and it's also low in sugar and only 35 calories. So it's an amazing solution. I don't know about you, Steve, but when I drink sparkling water, I'm like, meh, didn't quite do it for me. Pop is the way that you can kind of get more flavor, more function versus what everyone's been playing with in the past few years.
I'm definitely healthy-ish, so I feel like I've been effectively segmented there because that sounded a lot like me. So you got it right for one person at least, so that's good. I think going at a slightly more macro level than we've been talking about, but as a sort of voting confidence, I think in what you guys have been doing. First, Bev acquired a stake in a controlling stake even in Health Aid earlier this year. And that resulted in one of your co-founders becoming a chief mission officer, which is quite an intriguing job title. So I was wondering if you could explain what that means in practice.
Yeah, so I mean, if you talk to Dinah Trout, one of our 3 co-founders, she'll call this her promotion. So she was promoted to chief mission officer. And this has been a really cool thing for Health Aid. And we're still, we're only 2 months post transaction. But this is now allowing us to truly tap into what we believe as a business and as a brand. So our mission is to inspire you to discover the power of your gut and become your happiest and healthiest self. What an amazing mission. I mean, it's what brought me to Health Aid, and it's what I know consumers love about Health Aid. And there's so much room to talk about that more. So she'll be focused on how do we bring this to life in everything that we do. We've talked about the clinical research. She will be advancing our gut health endeavors in that realm and beyond, so that we are really leading the science and the expertise in gut health as a company. And, that may involve more research, that may be, connecting with the right other affiliate organizations that are looking at this. And so it's going to be huge for us to be able to have her dedicated to furthering and advancing that mission. It's also, following your gut is also about following your gut and living authentically and pursuing what makes you happiest. And so there's opportunities for us to bring her story to life. Now that she's freed up a little bit, when you're the CEO, there's only so much we can do to share the story that created Health Aid, but it's a really inspirational story of how Justin, Dinah, and Vanessa followed their gut, created something that they fully believed in and brought it to the world. And now that's this amazing business. So there's a lot of room there. And then, there's another aspect of this to where you can't be our happiest selves if our planet is not our happiest self. So we do a lot, our planet and the people on it. We do a lot at Health Aid to give back and to be a responsible company. And yet that's not one of our key messages. And it's not something that's first and foremost, because our focus has not been on that in terms of marketing or messaging. But now with Dinah at the helm as Chief Mission Officer, there's going to be more opportunities to tell those stories as well. Because we know that consumers are increasingly wanting to only affiliate with companies that affiliate with their own values and that share their own values in terms of responsibility, to both the people that we live with, our communities, as well as the world. So we're really excited about all of the potential that this has to bring the mission and the equity of Health Aid to life.
We've only got a couple of minutes yet left, so I'm going to end with a couple of questions that the Journalist Union would almost demand that I ask you. The first one being, as you think about 2022, what are some of the big challenges you think might be coming down the road in the next 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, if I really look at a macro level, supply chain pressures are on everyone. So that's a fun one, but we won't go into that because this is a brand innovators conversation. But I think, the two things that are on my mind is growing pop. We've recently repositioned it, and we know that this has such a potential. It's shelf stable. It can be brought on the go. It doesn't have to be cold like kombucha. And so how can we bring pop to the masses and help them get the prebiotic benefits that are so good for their gut and transform their beverage experience? So that's huge for us. We need to get it into more doors. We need to make sure people know about it. It's so delicious. And it's such a smart swap for anything that you're drinking. That's one of the things that we're going to be really focusing and doubling down on in 2022. The next one is sort of a moving target, and I don't know what it will look like, but we need to meet the consumer where they are, right? I hope that 2022 looks a lot different than 2021. I think we all do. And so we're watching and looking ahead and seeing how are we going to make sure that we are where they're at. For example, messages around nostalgia and, that cozy familiarity of years past, that really resonated in 21. But in 2022, we're thinking that consumers are going to be looking for new. They're going to be out back in the world, experiencing events, living their life, looking to reconnect. We've already seen that starting to happen, but now it's not going to be about necessarily nostalgia. It's going to be about taking this new COVID self that you have created, and a lot of people have focused in on their personal health and wellness, and how do you integrate that into the real world and into society? And so we're really thinking about macro insights like that and how that will feed into our future campaigns.
One very last quick question. You may slightly have answered it already, but is there anything else that's really exciting you about next year?
I mean, more marketing. I think that's what's been great with the First Bev transaction and with where we're at as a company is that everyone believes in the power of sharing our message and sharing our marketing. And so we're going to be doubling down and investing in marketing in a big way because we have so much room ahead to bring more people into kombucha and more people into health aid. So I'm excited about what it brings. We'll have new campaigns and some amazing new products as well. So stay tuned for that. We have some awesome seasonal rotational flavors that'll come out and just more fun things ahead.
Great, thanks so much, Charlotte. And I see you're with us, Emily, which is probably a sign that we should be being strong-armed out the door.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. That was so amazing and really exciting to hear about everything that you guys are doing at Health Aid Charlotte. I'm excited to try Pop, definitely on my to-do list now. And I just love hearing the story behind the company and, following your gut, not just, physically, but also your mental, choices as well. So thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Steve, for moderating.
Thanks so much.
Of course, thank you.
Bye. Appreciate it. Well, that was such a great session, and we're so excited for this next one where we're going to pivot into a little bit more of a food assessment kind of space with the Whole30 CEO and co-founder, Melissa Urban. So this is a huge panel. We're really excited to have Melissa here, and Kathy Taylor, the U.S. commissioning editor at WARC, is going to be moderating. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Hello, Emily. I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. That was a wonderful presentation.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you here. It's such a great day where we have a mix of, mental health and physical health brands and wellness across the board. So so excited to have you here to hear more about Whole30 and, everything behind your founding of the company and what you all are up to right now. So I'll hand it over to Kathy to kind of take it from here.
Hi. Yep. Thanks. And hi, Melissa. Good to see you again.
Hi, Kathy. Nice to see you too.
Yeah, so it's also a big day for startups. So it's interesting to listen to the Health Aid story because I think there are some different products, but parallels. If Stephen, my coworker, did not introduce work before, we are dedicated to making marketing more effective, and we do that through a lot of thought leadership content on our site. And if you're not familiar with us, just one way to experiment with work content is to go listen to some work podcasts that are on all the big platforms. Okay, so that salesy part is done. One of the main things we've really looked at work over the last, especially during the pandemic, is the whole health and wellness space. And we really follow consumer trends really carefully. And it's one of those things that sort of accelerated during the pandemic, an interest before, but more of an interest now. And we've seen all sorts of weird things that, like, Pfizer and AstraZeneca are among the most trusted brands. And, obviously we've seen a lot of things where, people are really into Peloton and eating healthier. I'll get into the bread baking trend in a bit, but it's over. Just so everybody knows, you can put away your starters or throw them in the garbage. But anyway, so it's been a big thing for us. So with that, I'm going to officially introduce Melissa Hartwig Urban, who is the CEO and founder of Whole30. And it's an amazing brand. I actually didn't know quite as much about it till I started doing this event, like just how many aspects it is. But I will let Melissa kind of tell the story of Whole30, and then we'll get into more insights about health and wellness now. So go ahead, Melissa.
Hi, thank you so much, Kathy. So I describe Whole30 as a reset for your health, habits, and relationship with food. It's not a weight loss diet. It's not a detox or a cleanse. It's a self-experiment based on the framework of an elimination diet to help people identify food sensitivities and create a nutrition plan that really works for them in their unique context. The Whole30 was co-founded in 2009 as a two-person self-experiment. It was something that my co-founder and I, just after a difficult, morning at the gym, decided what would happen if we, kind of cleaned up our diets and ate only anti-inflammatory foods that were, good for our health and good for our metabolism, like just got rid of that last 20%. I was already eating pretty healthy, already very active, focused on performance. But over the course of the next 30 days with these rules that I just wrote down on my, little training blog, I had such incredible benefits: energy, sleep, mood, attention span, and focus. My digestion smoothed out. People said I was glowing. And it really helped me identify some of the unhealthy habits and emotional associations I had with food and drink. So I had this amazingly transformative experience. I decided to share about it on my little CrossFit training blog. A few hundred people said, "Oh, I would try something like that." So I wrote up a very rudimentary set of rules. And that's really how the Whole30 was born. And now, 12 years later, here we are. Millions of people have changed their lives by following the 30-day elimination and reintroduction protocol. We have an enormous, thriving community, more than 4 million combined fans and followers across social media platforms. And I do have a really good insight into kind of trends, dietary trends, mental health trends, fitness trends through that community.
Yeah, yeah. So theoretically, you could do your Whole30 and do your 30 days, and maybe not go back to your old habits. Hopefully not. But you also kind of be like, well, I did that program. So I just was curious as to how you've been able to maintain a community and how that's extended, given that the original premise was this 30-day opportunity to kind of reset your relationship with food.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's another way that we are completely different from traditional kind of diet mindset and diet culture, in that we are a 30-day self-experiment. So people do the self-experiment, they eliminate foods that are commonly problematic and see how it impacts them. They reintroduce those foods very carefully and systematically and compare their experience. And then based on what they've learned, they then cycle into a program that we call food freedom, where essentially you're not following anyone else's diet rules. You know what does and doesn't work for you based on your Whole30 experience. And there's a whole book called Food Freedom Forever, where now you take what you've learned and you make conscientious, deliberate decisions about what to include in your diet in a way that feels really sustainable, but also lets you enjoy the culturally significant, emotionally significant, family significant foods and drinks that you love in a way that lets you continue to feel as good as you want to feel. And when inevitably, a holiday, a stressful life event, a move, a vacation kind of throws you off of those healthy habits, if you want to, you can always come back and do another Whole30 reset to kind of find your footing and then take that cycle of information off with you into your food freedom. So people generally stick around the community long after their Whole30 is over, because it keeps them grounded in their healthy habits and keeps them connected to that growth mindset that I am a healthy person with healthy habits. People love helping new Whole30ers through the program. So offering resources and support and encouragement and stories from their own experience. And especially during the pandemic, it helped people feel like they were part of something that was bigger than themselves. And that is something we all, I think, craved, from March of 2020 right on through until today. And the Whole30 community was able to provide that for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was interesting when we were just chatting the other day about that sense of community and how important that was, because we've all had our down days during this, I'm sure. So,
oh yeah,
yeah. So if I go on there, is it going to help me get through Halloween? That's
yeah.
my big personal question.
We have this SMS text message program where I will send you a text message twice a day for every single day of your Whole30. I wrote them myself. I now know exactly what you're feeling on day 4 of the Whole30, because I've seen millions of people go through the program. But once you're done with your Whole30, I still text you every Monday with like a tip or a helpful resource. And this past Monday, it was, Halloween candy is not special. You are an adult with a credit card and a driver's license and a Target, and you can go buy Butterfingers or those tiny Snickers or M&Ms anytime you want. So like, just the fact that it's sitting on your counter doesn't make it automatically special. I want you to really think about, is it worth it? Do I even want it? And if you do, then go ahead and eat it. But like, let's be a little more conscientious this season. And I got a lot of really positive feedback on that text.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So anyway, tell us a little bit more too about kind of the products and the money making part of the business, honestly, because you're a lot more than just a community at this point.
We are.
I shouldn't even say just a community. You're a lot more than a community at this point.
We are.
Yeah.
The community is always at the absolute foundation of what we do. But at this point, Whole30 has expanded. We've got an enormous media arm of the business. So we have over 140 Whole30 approved partners that have licensed the trademark and put Whole30 on their products, everyone from Applegate to LaCroix to Chipotle. You can now walk into Chipotle and order a couple different Whole30 salad bowls. We have, obviously do sponsored content and licensed content with our Whole30 partners and other outside brands. We've got a coaching program with more than 200 Whole30 certified coaches all across the country and some in other countries as well that kind of spread the Whole30 message in their local communities. And via virtual coaching, we launched a salad dressing line in the middle of a pandemic, which was super fun. As the health aid presenter was talking about supply chain, I know a whole lot about supply chain right now. So that's been really fun. And then obviously, I've written 8 books about the Whole30 at this point. So that's a pretty big source of revenue and a revenue driver for us as well. So we've expanded into a whole lot of different areas at this point.
Yeah. It's quite a range. So, I urge everybody to just go check out the site, even if you have no intention of Whole30ing, if that's a verb. I don't know. Maybe we could make it one. So tell us a little bit more about what kind of trends you've seen through your community throughout, the pandemic. I did joke about the bread baking, but there's kind of, at work, we've kind of covered 2 aspects of this. One is the I'm going to go bake cookies all night long and eat all of them trend, and I'm going to drink more alcohol, maybe intentionally or not. And then you've also seen more of the health and wellness side and sort of our need, the need, so many of us had to take better care of ourselves, not just about not getting COVID, but just in general.
Yeah, I did. I do have great insights, I think, just via the size of our community and the fact that we are so closely connected to the community. I am so personally connected to the community. So, what has played out in consumer research post-pandemic, when you look at consumer trends, when you look at Weight Watchers, latest stock report after their quarterly earnings, this trend of consumers rebelling against dieting. And I'm talking specifically about weight loss restrictive dieting, which when you think about it, makes total sense, right? We're all of a sudden in the middle of this like life or death emergency situation. Please don't talk to me about making myself smaller in this moment. Okay, I have way more important things to think about. But what I also observed through the Whole30 community specifically, but also now in consumer research, is that people who followed sort of a health-minded approach started coming back very strongly to that health-minded approach. And what I saw in Whole30 were DMs starting in March 2020 saying, I'm coming back to the Whole30 right now and leaning really heavily on my healthy habits. The Whole30 taught me how to cook. The Whole30 taught me how to meal prep. And of course, we've all been cooking at home now for the last year and a half. And I feel like I can't control so much about what's going on in this pandemic, but the way that I eat is something I can control. And I can keep myself healthy by leaning on the healthy habits that I've learned through the Whole30. And we saw this feedback so overwhelmingly and so much that we decided to put together a very impromptu kind of worldwide group Whole30 in April 2020 called the Whole30 at Home. And it was really just that resurgence of people who wanted to feel that connection to the community again, but that healthy connection, that connection that reminded them that they aren't alone, they are a healthy person with healthy habits, that even if their routine looks different, they can still kind of have some impact on their health by taking kind of more of an interest or returning interest to their food and, dietary lifestyle, but also people who were like, I want to do another Whole30 because the rest of my life feels so out of control. Kids, work, home, boundaries, all completely blurred. But I know the Whole30 makes me feel my best. And I know it helps me sleep better and it gives me better energy and a better mood and more self-confidence. And like, boy, could I use some of that. And that April program we ran was one of the most successful, I think, because people came back to the Whole30 community as that means of like grounding during a time of such incredible uncertainty.
Yeah, it's like I think we all felt that like I need to find some focus to my life, and I have to make something good of this time. Thank God we didn't know that a year and a half later we'd still be like at our home office, whatever, but we're okay. So I mean, mental health, that's been a huge thing during this. It has, if there's any positives to all of this, it's like that some of the stigma's gone away. And like I was looking back through some papers on work today, and like, 75% of the prescriptions for like antidepressants and, anti-anxiety pills, the 75% of the prescriptions were new during the early pandemic. That's one way to deal with mental health. There are many ways to do that. But what did you see in terms of like people connecting their sort of like bodily health, if you will, through eating to their mental health and trying to just feel better about themselves and life and their outlook during all this?
Yeah, there was definitely a period of time, kind of the first few months of the pandemic, where most of the country was sort of like either sheltering in place or in some form of a lockdown, where there was this sense, I felt like, on social media of like, we're all in this together. And there was a period of time where I think people were far more supportive. People were willing to be a little bit more vulnerable on social media and sharing some of their struggles. People were willing to kind of jump in and offer resources or support. I think there was this interesting dichotomy. So I looked at some of your stats, and obviously in the early pandemic, alcohol sales went up tremendously. But I also noticed this conversation around like sobriety and being sober curious really escalated in 2020. And of course, that's kind of a trend that I've seen at least climbing over the last 3 years or so. But I think people were starting to realize that some of the habits that they had pre-pandemic really were not serving their mental health. And it was a real opportunity, I think, to kind of sit back and reflect, like, is this serving me? Do I need to enact some new boundaries? Do I need to set some new habits? So I think that was one kind of opportunity. You also had this weird dichotomy where like some people were off like writing their novel, learning a new language, like getting their new business off the ground, whatever. And then there was this tremendous amount of pressure with like, well, what are you doing with your pandemic? And I think women, and especially moms, what we were doing is we were drowning in trying to work, trying to homeschool our children, bearing the bulk of like the household, work and the emotional labor that goes into running a household. We were struggling. So there was this real dichotomy, I think. And I think a lot of people, at least in the Whole30 community, we have a lot of parents in our community, we're really just talking about like, how do I survive, right? I'm not trying to be the best at anything. I'm not trying to do the best Whole30 I can. I can't even do a Whole30 right now, but like, how do I let good enough be good enough and figure out what to prioritize so that we can just like make it through this time period? And I found those conversations to be really, really helpful, certainly in my community, with feeling like people were being supported.
Yeah. And how did you kind of adjust what you do to not only that feeling, but, the pandemic? I know you had a plan, you had an original plan for, say, I think it was the salad dressings, but that had to change because how our lack of mobility kind of changed.
It did. The pandemic kind of changed everything. For one, I will say one benefit we had is that we've always been a completely remote team. We don't have a headquarters. We don't have like a home office. Everyone is completely remote. And so we rolled into the pandemic like, okay, we got this. We know how to do this. When we ran the group Whole30, the Whole30 at Home in April, we also in parallel ran a food freedom support group. So it was like, you don't want to do a Whole30. That is way too much for you in this moment. And we've never done this before, but we offered almost like 2 tracks on our website where you came to the website and you said, I'm in for the Whole30, or I just want support, letting good enough be good enough in my food freedom. And we had an entire parallel course to support that. So that was something new. And then, with our salad dressing line, it launched in August 2020. We'd obviously been planning this for like a year and a half. And the reason we launched salad dressings is because it's a big pain point within the Whole30 community to find a salad dressing that is, added sugar-free, no soy, no dairy, no gluten. We have a lot of Whole30 approved partners to do it, but we thought we had some flavor initiatives that we could add. And a big part of the marketing is take a bottle to work. Take a bottle with you when you're like having, lunch with the girls, like bring a bottle and leave it at your mother-in-law's house so that when you go there for dinner, like you've got a delicious option that fits your dietary preferences. And nobody was doing that. So of course we had to rethink the messaging and rethink the spin. And And it was very easy because we were all cooking at home and we were all just like making food, and we were so tired of making food, and like, could we make food easier? And then it was like, yeah, just throw some healthy ingredients in a pan, right? Cook some chicken, cook some broccoli, cook some sweet potato, dump it on a plate, and then add a delicious dressing or sauce. And you've got like instant flavor, meal put together so easily. And of course, that's like a really big benefit of any dressing or sauce. But yeah, we had to pivot a little bit in thinking about messaging because people weren't doing what they normally do.
Yeah, yeah. So have you started to change that now? I mean, now that we're kind of out, we're 1 foot out the door. I don't know what
Like,
we
are
are.
we? I know. I don't know either. We have, I think, a little bit, we have some product innovation that we really want to launch, and we are waiting to launch that until I think we have a better idea of whether people will be sort of out and about more, as we roll into like cold and flu season. And I think everything's been like a little bit unknown. So we're starting to, and especially as we head into the holidays, I think people are like, we're gathering this year, right? Like, we're doing Thanksgiving. I know we're doing Halloween. Like, are we doing Christmas? So one of the things that, my team is always very good at is staying very nimble and flexible. And we're able to kind of pivot if we need to last minute based on what's happening in the world, which has served us really well. So we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing we've just heard across the board over this time is just everybody has to be nimble, and some companies, are just nimble as part of their DNA. The other ones had to learn it. So
Yeah.
you were in a good place from that, that to that extent. Yeah,
Yeah, we have been. And as you mentioned earlier, like, community is always at the heart of what we do. And part of the reason Nimble is being built is built into our DNA is because we are constantly looking to the community for like where to go and what to do next. Like, how can we better serve you? So yeah, that's part of our ethos for sure.
So how do you go about marketing? I mean, it's interesting, like when you have a community that kind of gives you this really nice like foundation, but what other things do you use to kind of let people know that you have these salad dressing brands, because they're all direct to consumer, right? Nothing is in the store.
Nothing's in store. We have one online outlet through Thrive Market, which is a really popular kind of online shop. Think like Costco meets Whole Foods, where you can get, really healthy products at a discount. And then we have DTC. We haven't even thought about getting into retail at this point, which is like totally fine, in part because of supply chain and manufacturing issues, and in part just because we wanted to kind of take a pause and just let this business, mid-pandemic kind of settle in. Historically, the bulk of our marketing, like if we're talking about the first, call it 5 years that Whole30 was in existence, the bulk of our marketing was word of mouth via community. That was it. We didn't do any marketing spend. We didn't do any advertising. We haven't done, historically a lot of that in general. It's been people do the Whole30. They have an enormously tremendous life-changing experience. They want to tell everyone they know. They want everyone in the world to know what an awesome Whole30 they had. And then more people come to the program. So that's been a huge channel for us. When I started publishing books in 2012, and then the Whole30 flagship book in 2015, we started to see an awful lot of press. And again, most of the press has just been them coming to us like, hey, we want to talk about Whole30. So I've done, tons of national media, and there have been a lot of articles, which have definitely helped. Obviously, with the salad dressing line, that's kind of a new thing, when you're talking about marketing a program like the Whole30 that is so mission driven. That's a very different marketing conversation than here are our salad dressings. Like, we can really market those in a very traditional sense. We've done some so far, some Google, Facebook advertising, kind of a light lift, and some marketing through Thrive Market. But a lot of what works the best is our organic marketing. We're sending emails out, we're doing SMS texts, we're featuring it on social media. Our community is really jazzed about it. And one of the greatest things about that Whole30 logo is that you don't have to be on a Whole30 to know that that logo means it's gluten-free, dairy-free, added sugar-free, soy-free. So like, if it meets your dietary requirements, that logo is just a sign. And so we're seeing customers come in who have never done a Whole30. They probably won't do a Whole30, but they eat gluten-free, and they know that that little symbol means that this is something that their family can have. So we're going to continue those external marketing efforts for sure as we roll into 2022.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you really about, how having that kind of Whole30 like seal on like, LaCroix or, Chipotle, like, I mean, obviously it helps your community and helps people make a healthy choice, but it's also branding. And so I wondered if you measure like sort of where your awareness is or what have you through like all the different channels, including that can of seltzer, and how that helps build your brand.
Yeah, we definitely do. The Whole 30 Approved program started kind of unofficially in like 2010 when a friend of mine was making jerky that had no added sugar, which was super hard to find in 2010. And I was like, well, you're making this thing that fits the Whole 30 program rules, and I'm not going to make jerky anytime soon, but somehow I would love to connect you with my community. So let's just like call you Whole 30 Approved. And of course, that program has like grown tremendously since then, but it is it's a win-win-win, right? It's a win for us because it is a branding play. We now have our logo on like thousands of products, maybe 1,000 products all throughout the grocery store. So you can't walk down the salad dressing aisle or the seltzer aisle or the natural meat, section or the bacon without seeing the Whole 30 Approved logo. So that's big. It's a huge win for our consumers because there's so much label reading to know what goes into your food. And if you see that logo on the front of the package, you're like, this is it. I know exactly what this stands for and what this means. And then for the brand, you are now connected to this fiercely loyal, devoted community, the vast majority of whom have said in our marketing research, oh, once I find a Whole 30 Approved brand I like, I just buy that forever. That's it. I know it fits. I know it's delicious. I know it works for me. Like, why would I want to try to find a different brand of ketchup or salad dressing or hot sauce? So it really is like a three-way win, where we get the marketing awareness and the branding, our consumers get connected, and our brands, now get to advertise to not only Whole 30ers, but anybody who's just looking for like sort of a seal that indicates the way their family eats.
Yeah. Yeah. And how has the community kind of guided your product development? I mean, maybe you had it on your radar screen that salad dressing would be great, but like, are there times where they've sort of, taken you in a direction that maybe you didn't kind of see coming, so to speak?
Like always, often, not always. I won't make it sound like that makes it sound like we have no plan whatsoever, but I have always said that like, I never have a good independent idea for the Whole 30 all by myself. It is always driven by the community. We are so closely connected and so in touch that we're always listening. So whether they ask for something explicitly or whether they just say like, they're chatting in the comments, talking about a pain point or an issue, then we can say like, oh, okay, we can create a resource for that. I can write an entire book around that, which is how my last book, The Whole 30 Friends and Family, came to be. Like people were like, oh, I'm so good on the Whole 30. I've got all my resources down. I feel like I know what I'm doing, but I really struggle with socializing on the plan. Like, what am I, I want to have a birthday party. What am I supposed to do? I'm going to a baby shower. What do I bring? And I was like, I can write a whole cookbook about that, about recipes that are like good for, by event or by kind of life milestone, and figure out how you create a menu for it. So we listen very closely to what the community is asking for. We also look at sort of just trends in general in food and health and wellness. And we know where our strength and our skill set lies. And we try to kind of stick to like the hedgehog concept of what we're really, really good at. And that's where innovation comes from.
Yeah. So you were talking a little bit earlier about kind of the food freedom, track that you, I think I got the name right. Anyway.
Yeah.
So would that become like a sub brand for you, or is that something, I wondered what you were going to, potentially do with that. It's an interesting sort of way to kind of maintain, if you will. Yeah,
it is. Well, I think the reason the book Food Freedom Forever came about is because we've always talked about life after your Whole 30. The point of the Whole 30 is to never need the Whole 30 again. I want you to do the program, learn everything you can learn. If you need to do it a couple times, cool, but then take what you've learned and then like never need another diet program again, not even, our 30-day experiment.
Yeah.
But the 30 days are so much easier for people to complete because we have so many resources around it and so much support. And then life after is kind of like, oh man, how do I manage this? So I wrote Food Freedom Forever, offered people sort of a 3-step plan for like really staying in touch with their healthy habits. And there are a ton of resources around food freedom, right? We're thinking about more. We're thinking about, could we do food freedom webinars to keep people, more kind of in touch with their healthy habits? Should I create a Whole 30 text message series around food freedom. I have a Whole30 day by day book that takes people every day through the Whole30. Should we create a journal like that for food freedom? It's a little more challenging from like a branding perspective. So we've thought about like, well, should we have like food freedom approved options, right? Like items that are outside of Whole30, but we think are like really awesome. And the problem is that everyone's food freedom looks different. And mine sometimes includes like Justin's peanut butter cups. And I don't know if we'd want to put, that up for display as like this is food freedom approved, Yeah. But I do. And I think it's really important to demonstrate that people's food freedom includes a large variety of foods, some of which are like, I could only loosely describe as food-like products, but I love them. They're worth it. I know how much of these I can eat and still feel as good as I want to feel. And like, that's important too. So we talk about food freedom a lot, and it's certainly an area of opportunity to talk about more as people kind of graduate from the Whole30 and they're like, okay, I still want support in my life after.
Yeah, yeah. No, I wondered about that because I mean we all do need support with those kinds of things. I try, and mostly I'm good, but you
Yeah.
have your days. What can I say?
Yeah.
So, anyway, so just people, if you have questions, please feel free to like type them in a little box. I think we all know how to do that by now. Like, where do you see kind of the Whole30 brand going like in the next year or two? I hate to predict out too far these days, but hey, got to try.
I know. We do have some really interesting innovations coming up, and I can't quite talk about them yet because it's a little bit too early, but we have listened to the community and looked at the trends, and we'll be rolling out some additional support and resources that we think are going to help us reach some new community members in early 2022. So that is super exciting for us. We are really focusing on our coaching program right now. We want to offer, coaching. We've sort of like let coaching slide over the last year because people have been so incredibly stressed and overwhelmed and richly scheduled that it's been an afterthought. And B, people aren't getting together in person. And that's a lot of the value of offering, a coaching service is like getting together with people in your local community. But we're definitely putting a lot of resources into coaching for 2022, maybe even offering different tiers of coaches for people who are interested in coming in at different levels and offering even more resources and training materials for them. So we're really excited for that. We definitely have some new innovations in CPG. We have a few new flavors that we've been testing that we want to launch, and a new format that will be great for on the go if we are on the go, hopefully, fingers crossed, right? So so we've got a really great plan, I think, for the coming year. And then as always, just looking to continue to support existing Whole30ers through their journey.
Yeah, yeah. So what do the coaches do? I mean, what's their role? I mean, they're not out there telling you to like run a 10K.
No, yeah.
So what's their job? And
Yeah,
how do they?
coaching is super interesting. I originally thought about the program as like boots on the ground, in-person social support, helping people do the Whole30. So, I didn't imagine that coaches would have professional kind of designations. I just imagined like someone like me who had done the Whole30 a bunch of times and just wanted to be a resource for other people doing the program. And we do have a lot of coaches like that. But we also have coaches who are MDs and RDs and psychiatrists and psychologists and functional medicine doctors who are using the program with their patients with great success, which is so cool to see and really fun. We have some coaches who run meal delivery, Whole30 approved meal delivery services, and they're kind of packaging, Whole30 and mindfulness and self-care in with like, here's some Whole30, food that I can have delivered to your doorstep once a week, which is really cool. So our coaches are kind of taking the program in directions that I never necessarily envisioned, but that was the whole point. If we want the program to grow, we had to include kind of this interim step between me just talking to the community. And now I've got these coaches that are in between, almost as an extension of Whole30 HQ, that are doing such amazing things with the program in diversity, equity, and inclusion spaces, in their professional spaces, in their local communities, virtually. So that's been a real joy to watch grow and develop. And I think coaching is only going to increase and be more popular as the country starts to open up more.
Yeah, so they haven't been doing, has there been Zoom coaching to some
Lots.
degree? Yeah.
Lots. Yeah. Just like
Yeah.
this, right? We would normally be in an environment where like we're all in person and we're on a stage talking. And so just like all of my speaking engagements have been Zoom in the last year and a half, so has coaching. But you know, we'll take what we can get, right? If we can't be in the same room, like this is as good as it gets.
So anyway, so I wondered what other brands kind of in the health and wellness space that you admire. Like, are there ones you kind of, I mean, you have your own kind of product and mission and proposition, but are there ones that you really admire for how they approach health and wellness?
Yes, of course there are. So I think about Siete. Siete is one of our Whole30 approved partners for some of their salsas and hot sauces, but I've known the family, the Garza family behind Siete for many, many years since they were like just, talking about their tortillas at like the very first Expo West. And I just love their story. I absolutely love their devotion to community. They've got this space in Austin with this big backyard where they host dinners and parties and bring community together. They listen to their community and they're rolling out such innovative products, but that are still kind of in line with like people's health goals and people's dietary preferences. So I absolutely love what Siete is doing. I think they're a fantastic brand. I super admire Ben and Jerry's. I grew up in New Hampshire, so I'm a New England girl.
Okay, I love New Hampshire. Yay.
Yeah, I grew up in New Hampshire. But Ben and Jerry's, when it comes to their diversity, equity, and inclusion stance, like they go hard. And I really admired that. I would like to think that Whole30 has been very clear and very public about where we stand on social justice issues. We're not afraid to use our voice, either me personally or as a brand. And I look at brands like Ben and Jerry's, and I really admire the stance that they've taken in favor of their broad and diverse community to make people feel welcomed and represented. So on an opposite end of the spectrum, I very much admire them as well.
Yeah, well, so I don't know what the Whole30 Ben and Jerry's product is. That
Yeah.
might be that might be a tough one, but
that's a food freedom, but it would include peanut butter cups as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, all right, well, good. No, but yeah, and it's also an interesting brand because they've I don't know how many years ago they got bought by Unilever, but they've somehow managed to like. They've lost none of their mission in the process, and that just seems super hard.
It's so interesting too, because we've seen that happen to a bunch of brands in the Whole30 ethos. So like RX Bar, Primal Kitchen, Epic are three kind of really big Vital Proteins, was bought by Nestle. We've seen that a lot. And every time it happens, I'm always a little like, ooh, are they going to lose like the really cool kind of vibe that they've built? And so far, absolutely none of them have. It's like these big brands recognize that trying to pivot is like turning a battleship. And the way that they can pivot is by like plucking these companies up and building them into their portfolio. It's been actually quite awesome for Whole30 now to work with these brands that have all of the access to resources that these huge companies have to offer, but still get to watch these companies be, stay there like really strong. Their moral compass stays really strong, which I think has been cool.
Yeah, no, I was interviewing actually the CMO from Kellogg's, and I didn't realize that they owned RX Bar, but it's so cool because I think what we're finding just in general is that is like you said, that these brands just they are much more willing to kind of take somewhat of a hands-off approach than they might have been 10 years ago. They're actually buying the brand for what it stands for and not what it is. And that's kind of encouraging, I think,
I think it is, as they should, right? These brands got to be the way that they are with this fiercely loyal audience and so much success because they are the way that they are. So like, yeah, let them do what they do. And then, I guess the bigger brands get to reap the benefit of diversifying their portfolio.
Yeah. So my last question to you is what you would like to see kind of happen in the health and wellness space over the next year, like beyond your brand. Like how would you like to see, consumers progress, brands progress, all that kind of thing as we move to a new world, we hope.
Yeah, I would love to see more collaborations between brands that I think have, similar values and similar kinds of offerings. Chipotle does an incredible job collaborating with different brands that like you would never expect, but I think it's really fun for the audience to see those kinds of collaborations. And it's certainly, I think, good for both of the brands. I think we're going to continue to see a trend in people getting closer to their food. And I really like that idea, whether you're going plant-based, which is of course a huge trend right now, or you're learning more about regenerative agriculture, which is also a huge trend right now. And by the way, they have like so much in common when you're talking about the value system behind them. I think we're going to see, and I want to facilitate consumers like being more closely connected to their food, whether it's where their food comes from, are they eating seasonally? Could they source this locally? Or even if it's just like, can I buy food, bring it home and turn it into a meal? I think we're going to continue to see that even as the pandemic eases and people, the kind of world opens up, people are going to stay more closely connected to their food. And I think that's going to be great for all of us.
Yeah, it's interesting, to see like, again, and this because Kellogg's is top of mind with me right now, but just, that they've kind of embraced the plant-based, kind of ethos of their business. And we've seen a lot of other brands that are trying to just kind of expand the palette of what it is that we eat, because when you think of all the things all the potential things you could eat in the world, it's so narrow what we eat as humans. It doesn't seem like it, but it really is. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. And I'm really loving the plant forward trend. We have a lot of brands in our portfolio that meet that criteria. And I personally do a lot of plant forward things because I don't do dairy, and, brands like Kite Hill, which I'm so jazzed on right now, are just taking that to a new dimension because it actually tastes good and the flavor profiles are good. So I'm excited about that too.
Okay, I'll have to try that. I'm going to try Health Aid too. So
yeah, I like Health Aid too.
So
I feel like we're all walking away from today with like a to-do list of like items to buy, things to sign up for. So it's a good next steps for everyone. But thank you guys both so much. That was such a great session. So great to have you on our stage today, Melissa. And thank you, Kathy, so much for being such a great moderator. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, thanks. This was really fun.
It was.
Okay.
Have a good rest of your day.
Yep,
you
bye.
too.
Well, huge thank you to Kathy, Melissa for that program, and all of you keeps tuning in because we've got a few more great panels, and definitely encourage you all to submit your questions. We're here live with our speakers and they definitely want to hear from you. So feel free to submit any in the Q&A or chat functions, and we'll make sure that our speakers will be able to answer your questions right here live. So without further ado, thrilled to introduce another incredible speaker from a great brand in the health and wellness space. We have Val Kaplan, the CMO of Headspace, joining us, and moderating this panel will be Sandra Abi Rashid, the VP of Client Services at Digilent. Hi, how are you guys?
Hey, I'm here.
Good.
Hi, Emily. Thank you. Hi, Val.
Hi, Sandra. Good to see you.
Nice to see you again.
Great to have you guys both here. So excited to hear everything that you guys are doing at Headspace right now. Sorry. And really excited to dive in. So I'll hand it over to you, Sandra, to kick things off.
Thanks so much, Emily. Val, again, nice to see you. Hope you're well rested. I'm sure you are.
Trying.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. I'm Sandra Abi Rashid. I head up client services at Digilent. And for those of you who don't know much about Digilent, before we jump in, we're an omni-channel advertising company, and we focus really on growth-minded brands and agencies to deliver data-driven strategies that deliver results and faster. So Val, first question, really broad question. You came to Headspace from Hulu, and you made the move earlier this year at a time when there was tremendous growth, and I know that there still is. What's the transition been like for you?
Yeah, it's been interesting. So it's funny you talk about, there was actually tremendous growth at Hulu and at Headspace. You can imagine the pandemic has been creating demand in both areas. But it was fun. I think, the move for me was really motivated by the mission. I think mental health and wellness, there's never been a greater need for it in the world than right now. And to be able to come over to a brand and to a company where that's the reason we get out of bed every morning was pretty incredible. So it's a privilege to be a steward of that mission. I will say, starting a new job and starting in a leadership position and working on rebuilding a marketing team and a marketing function fully remote has definitely been a challenge. Stressful, difficult, getting to know people, setting culture through a screen is never easy to do. Luckily, I have a lot of tools at my disposal to manage some of that work stress, but it's been a journey for sure.
It's nice though, you say having a sense of purpose. It's nice to jump into a new role where you have that strong sense of purpose in the industry that you're in.
I will say, and every single person at the company has that. That's probably been one of the most incredible things about the culture is we're all here for a really personal reason, and that mission-driven feel is in every single employee.
Yeah, and I would say even now during the post-pandemic, or still kind of in it, the culture piece is so much more important than it used. It's always been important, but it's such a driving factor of team spirit and collaboration. So great that you landed in a space that has that.
Yeah, for sure.
So for those who may not be familiar with Headspace, could you give us a quick overview of some of the tools, the features, some of your mindfulness strategies?
So Headspace is, we're a global leader in mindfulness and mental health and meditation. And we offer a wide range of tools for, managing areas like stress and sleep and focus. And there are a few different ways we deliver that. Through our app, we have, like I said, hours and hours of meditation content, different mindfulness exercises, movement exercises. We have a really cool mode called Focus Music, which is playlists and some original music too that is specifically created to help you focus on the task at hand, whether that's work or something else. We also have a really robust B2B business, so there are a number of employers out there who provide Headspace to their employees as part of their wellness and benefits programs. And then there are a lot of places where we make sure our content is showing up off platform and meeting consumers where they are. You might have seen our partnerships with brands like Starbucks or Netflix. We have a few different series on Netflix around meditation and sleep health and all of that. So really a cross-platform content creator and guide for all of these different elements that can guide you along your mental health and mindfulness journey.
Great. And listen, you mentioned it, and Melissa Urban mentioned it in the previous fire chat about Whole30 and the pandemic, and there's never been a bigger need for that. In companies, yes, on the B2B side, but on the B2C side. And some of the information that your team shared with me is, just before the pandemic, the demand for mental health was already growing, and 50%, over half of the adults in the US today have a need for mindfulness and mental health support. So question to you is, what is your team doing, or the Headspace doing right now to democratize this and bring the tools and the mindfulness tools and just the awareness that this exists to the masses?
Yeah, I think the effect of COVID has been really interesting. I've seen it as, I like to call it the great accelerator. And I think a lot of what it's done is not necessarily create new trends, but just amplify and accelerate them. And I think one of them, which is a really positive one, has been this sort of destigmatization and normalization of mental health and conversations around mental health. So at the same time, while the need is greater than ever, there's also just an openness and an acknowledgement of it that is greater than it's ever been. And I really feel like, in the health and wellness space, mental health is kind of having a moment now, the same way that physical health did maybe 10 or 15 years ago, where it's shifting from the unspoken problem to, the have to do, something you have to do to take care of yourself. And we're trying to shift even farther to something that you want to do, and something that is just taught from a young age of taking care of your mind and taking care of your mental health is just core to overall well-being and is kind of a privilege of the human condition. So there are a lot of different ways we're trying to make sure that's accessible as possible, through our consumer product, through our B2B efforts, also a number of social impact initiatives. When the pandemic first hit, we were the first to launch programs where we made Headspace free for frontline workers and free for educators and free for the unemployed for a good amount of time. So just making sure that when people are in those moments of crisis, that they can get the help that they need. And the way we sort of like to talk about it is we all have mental health. We're just all at different points along that journey of mental health. So it's not just about the moments of crisis, but how do you catch people in those moments and then also help turn those into healthy habits and routines that can last a lifetime, and continue to support you even when you're in moments of thriving or moments of opportunity, that you don't lose that type of mental health self-care when it shouldn't only be when things are bad that it's top of mind.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think people are more vocal about it now than they used to be. So when you used to check out and say, I absolutely need to go running for my mental health. Today it's more like I need to take a mental health day, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's totally accepted. And I think you're right. We need to get people there where they themselves feel comfortable saying it out loud.
Yeah.
But I think more often than not, it's become a norm and it's becoming more and more accepted.
Yeah. And I think, as a brand, we consider that part of our responsibility as well, to be one of the voices in the room, to make sure that we're talking about it and making it comfortable for everyone to talk about it.
Do you see any of this changing as we go back to work, go back to the workplace, and we're less and less remote? How are you adapting to that?
I kind of think of it as the new normal, and I feel like we all talk about like the COVID return, and then we're also realizing that like we're not going back to the way that things were before, whether it's fully remote or a hybrid system or whatever it may be. And we're just trying to work to ensure that also carries through to the way we think about mental health and talk about mental health. I'm not sure, just shifting out of sort of that crisis moment, it might not always be at the forefront, but I do think that it's been, hopefully we've all sort of collectively learned the lesson that it needs to remain core to our collective well-being.
Yeah, it's part of that balance that we're all looking for.
Yeah.
It's the physical, the mental, and more you see that piece integrated. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about growth a little bit. So we'll move shift into that. Your background at Hulu and Helix Sleep has been focused on acquisition and growth. What's been the biggest challenge for you at Headspace in terms of growing subscribers?
Yeah, so Headspace is really interesting. As far as, when you think about sort of the funnel of awareness and consideration and intent, where we excel when it comes to brand love and sort of brand advocacy and brand resonance and fandom, we are off the charts. People who know us and use us are absolutely obsessed with us. And I think that's one of the incredible benefits of having a product that literally makes people happier. They really love your product because they really, really appreciate that happiness. And one of the anecdotes I like to share is, when I got this job earlier this year, we did a little press release and I got 7 or 8 emails from members just telling me how much they love the brand and basically warning me not to mess it up. Not asking for jobs, not asking for money. I got plenty of those too. But really members who just wanted me to know how incredibly special this brand was to them and how it had changed their lives. And that does not happen very regularly. And so there's something really, really special about the role that we play in consumers' lives. Where we have more challenges is just on the awareness and consideration side of things. The people who know us and use us love us, but we don't have enough people using us. And so we've been really focusing a lot on the awareness side, just making sure people know who we are and really understand what we do, and that it's not this scary black box of meditation, but it is actually something that is really accessible and really easy to integrate into your day, like 2, 3, 4 minutes at a time. It's an easy message for me to sell because I'm admittedly someone who is really skeptical of meditation for most of my life.
Yeah.
You know, I'm busy, I'm high achieving and goal oriented. And whenever I had free time, I wanted to put it to use. I didn't want to sit there and,
they're like, you want me to stop
and clear my head. I was like, wait a second. And quite frankly, it wasn't until COVID when I became a Headspace user. You know, there weren't a lot of coping mechanisms when it first started. And it was the fact that I could literally just commit to like 4 or 5 minutes a day, that it got me over the hump of giving it a shot. So I know there are plenty of people out there who that resonates with. And so we're trying to figure out how do we just educate folks on how easy and how realistic and practical it actually is. And then the other thing we want to think about is how do we bring to life what the benefits are. And so thinking about, you know, longer form storytelling of real humans who have had the experience of establishing a practice, you know, whether it's just for 10 days or for a month, or the you know, the folks who have been sort of living this for many years, bringing to life what the actual benefits are, and, you know, being less stressed and less anxious and having better sleep and more peace of mind, and focusing less, like I said, on that black box of meditation and really more on the both achievable but also incredibly powerful ways that it can change your life.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned the funnel, and you know, as marketers, which I am as well, we tend to go back to that traditional upside down pyramid. Like there's the awareness and the consideration and the conversion and the retention, and it's all true, right? But then what you're saying is also we need to find different ways to reach them, and it's not necessarily in the traditional funnel, like, oh, be aware and then engage with us and then convert and download. It really is trying to find them in those moments. Yeah. Like you mentioned, you know, like you're working hard, you're stressed, it's a Friday, you can't sleep, something, right? Exactly. It's interesting. So that the journey, what we call, you know, the traditional journey that is a funnel, because we like to put things in categories and boxes, isn't linear anymore. So we have to find, you know, the challenges, finding them at those moments when they really need you. And then when those benefits scream, right? Exactly.
And if you think about it, like our product is literally about emotions and emotional regulation and all of that. And so all that journey that is messy for all consumers is even more so because of, you know, what we're trying to market.
For sure. Yeah. So when we go back to the brand love segment, you know, those who come and those who stay love the brand and send you letters, threatening letters, don't mess it up.
Exactly.
How do you, what are the pockets and what are the segments that you have today? So I'm sure that there are, you know, the Uber users, and how do you identify those? Because, you know, that's also, retention is a huge part of the business as well.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear you expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're a subscription business, so retention is huge. I'd say at the highest level, we kind of think about it in 2 segments, the mindfully aware. And those are the people who you don't have to sell them on meditation or mindfulness. They believe in it. They have believed in it. They probably have experienced the benefits of it before. And what they're just looking for is what's sort of that friend or that friendly guide solution that can stay with them on their journey. And that's a lot of where the fandom comes from today of people who are totally bought into and have experienced the benefits and just love, you know, that Headspace is sort of the companion along with them for their journey. So with that segment, we think a lot about not just retention, but also referrals and word of mouth.
Ambassadors.
How do we turn those fans into ambassadors and actual growth drivers for our business? The second category that we think about, we refer to more as like the mindfully curious. So maybe they're, you know, not fully on the boat for meditation yet, but they are ready for better in general and are sort of constantly thinking about self-improvement and how do I be healthier? How do I perform better at my work? How am I happier in my relationship? How do I show up better for my family? And you know, they know us most likely, or they at least know of solutions like us, but maybe they're not 100% sure yet that this is going to be the thing for them. And so there, it's a much more, sort of, yes, it's also about the convenience and the approachability of it, but that's also where that real like member benefit story comes in of how do we show and demonstrate that at the center of it all of the health and wellness, like having the mental health piece and the internal peace of mind first is really the cornerstone.
So it sounds like they're coming in through the happiness, meditation part, trying out a little bit of everything, and then falling in deep love.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we talked about the growth and the different segments and the audiences. So if we turn to media for a little bit, how are your teams and how are you adapting your media strategy to support these different audiences or these different segments?
Yeah, we're really trying to think full funnel as much as possible, which has been relatively recent for us. I think, there was so much organic growth in the space, and we also got a good amount of earned coverage, as you can imagine. And so for so long, we just kind of had the organic demand pulling us along. And I think now, as we're thinking about expanding to that mindfully curious audience that might take a little bit more heavy lifting, we're starting to invest more in awareness channels and making sure that we're driving that demand generation and not just demand capture. So really thinking holistically about, not just, digital across the full funnel, but not just the performance channels that are going to drive conversion, but in the longer term, how are we making sure that we're continuing to generate that demand to drive sustainable growth?
So you have an omni media approach, obviously.
We do.
So as you said, not just digital. And how are you right now measuring the performance of the different tactics, the different strategies and the different media tactics? Is it linked to the business? Are you focusing more on download? Do you look at long-term growth, lifetime value? Sorry.
Yeah, it's linked to the business. So ultimately coming down to ROAS, so looking at lifetime value over acquisition costs, and still sort of working on getting all the different pieces of the puzzle together, but using a media mix model to figure out the right way to optimize our channel allocation. We also look at a set of like leading indicator metrics, I would say. So obviously on the more brand focused channels, that's around awareness and aided awareness. And then on the acquisition side, we use signups, or essentially like free trial starts. So just making sure we're getting people into that business. It's much more for us about free trial starts than it is for app installs.
Right.
For a couple of reasons. We actually have a pretty sizable install base, as you can imagine. And we have a rapidly growing B2B business. So that's also driving some of those installs. And then we're also shifting a good amount of acquisition to our web channel. So we really think about it as that moment of sign up, of coming into the ecosystem and saying, yes, I want to try this experience and see how it goes. And then that's when it really shifts towards making sure we're delivering that personalized, guided experience. And again, as soon as people really get the taste of it and get a taste of the benefits, that's when we have our hooks in them.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, you get them into the funnel first and then drive them from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in terms of analytics, so you've mentioned that you have the media metrics, you're looking at KPIs, you're looking at media mix modeling. So, which means you're layering in your business objectives as well. How much do you rely on data and analytics or business intelligence internally to evaluate that performance and then identify how you can continue to grow?
I'd say a good amount. I think successful marketing is a blend of art and science always, and try to be data informed and not necessarily data driven. And I think so often, the data, if you focus too much on the data, the thing that usually misses the mark is the creative. And so I think we really try to build our team and build our function in a way where everything's working in concert with each other, and you have, aligned around a strategy, but you make sure that the creative and the messaging and the audience targeting and the channel mix are all working together to achieve the same thing. And so I think in order to do that successfully, like I said, it's data informed, but not necessarily data driven. And then as soon as we get it out there, trying to have the right mechanisms in place to be able to sort of quickly learn and iterate and optimize.
Yeah, so you're monitoring that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And totally agree with that philosophy in terms of, data needs to be informed. And we often say, there's what the data tells us. And if we take it too much to heart, then we're missing, the bigger picture. So there's the data, there's the media reality, and then there's the brand reality and your business reality that we need to work with. So completely aligned with you.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about partnerships before, so I want to dive into that. You have partnerships in various industries today: airlines, Doctors Without Borders, Nike, Casper. What do you look for when you're looking to build a partnership?
I think there's a few different elements that go into it. First and foremost, well, I'd say there's two things that I put as highest priority. First is brand fit, but then also right there is member fit. Like, does this actually make sense? Does 1 + 1 = 3 here by bringing these two brands and this offering together? Or are we just, is it a vanity project for the marketers, or is it actually creating, added value for the joint customers? So that's really our guiding North Star. And then I think beyond that, obviously any objective that we have across the marketing funnel. So is it driving awareness? Is it driving consideration? Is it bringing those member benefits to life? Is it, holding people's hands down the funnel and giving them an opportunity to then sample the product and get a taste of the experience? But those two things, first and foremost, is their brand alignment and is their actual real value add for our joint customers.
Right. And most brilliant partnership in my eyes. And I grew up with Sesame Street. And absolutely fantastic, brilliant. How you join forces to help kids and parents make bedtime easier and integrate meditation, at a very young age, because it's tough to instill those types of values, when they're older. So starting really young. Tell us about the journey when you created that partnership.
Yeah, I'm also biased towards that one. I have a 3-year-old, so yeah. It's the only way I survive bedtime every single night. So we have a series of podcasts that we did with Sesame Street, and then we also have a series of books that are all around just healthy sleep preparation for children and children of different ages. And it's beautiful. I mean, I think that if you think about, those two buckets, that one hits the nail on both, an incredible brand partner, but also just such a needed thing. And I love it because it's, we have this category of parenting and kids content where, sometimes you're okay, is the audience the child? Is the audience the parent? And this is one of those where it's very, very, very clearly both. So it's just been an incredible pleasure. It's been a long time bringing it to life, but it has just been, I think, hugely successful and something that we'll look to figure out how do we continue to build upon that in the future.
I imagine some of the letters that you received were from parents too. Don't take this
exactly.
away from me.
Well, and I think you make a good point too about, starting the healthy habits young. We, as a brand, we kind of like to think of ourselves as the front porch into the mental health journey, or the world of mindfulness and mental health, of being that sort of accessible way to ease into it. So there's a real nice alignment there too, is taking that first step when you're actually at a younger age. And so you can build those healthy habits even earlier on.
Right. Brilliant. I vote for that. Sesame Street. Okay. So back to Headspace now, just any surprises, anything that came along the way that just, made you say, okay, this is an aha moment, a case or something that you didn't anticipate?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've had a few, honestly. I think on a personal level, one of the things that has surprised me the most in a really pleasant way was just how much we as a company and we as a group of people live and breathe these values. We often start our meetings with meditations. We take Mindful Fridays,
Nice.
where you have the day off to take care of yourself. And so it's just, it is, you know, we're still a business and an organization, and we have our daily challenges to work through, but for the most part, to just be at a place that so deeply lives and breathes its values and practices what it preaches has just been a really, really pleasant surprise. On the business, on the consumer side of things, what I've been maybe not necessarily surprised at, but I found really intriguing is the type of like positioning and creative that people seem to respond to most. And it's really, like I said, most people find us when they're in these moments of crisis and these moments of need. But what we found is that people don't want the problems just reflected right back at them, but they also don't want, like, you know, a completely rosy picture of it's all going to be okay. And so figuring out like what is that fine balance of seeing you and empathy, but then also delivering hope. And so it's been a really interesting exercise as a marketer to figure out, okay, what's that right way to sort of like acknowledge the low, but also you know, give some optimism for where it can go from here. And yeah, I think that's been a really
that's super interesting. Yeah.
Exercise.
Yeah. So we talk about optimism. We turn to the future, and this is my last question. What does the future hold for health and wellness in your eyes? You know, 5 years from now, 15 years from now, what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I do think mental health is just gonna be a foundational baseline part of it. And so hopefully the conversation shifts less from how do we fix this, and it's more just, you know, a conversation of how you are. And I love, you know, I think something that has really happened during COVID, but I really hope continues, is, you know, when you meet someone and the sort of colloquialism is just, hi, how are you? Like we use how are you as a hello instead of how are you as a question. And I think that started to change. I think people have started to answer it really, really, and to really share how they're feeling, because, you know, a lot of times over the past year and a half, we haven't been great. And so I think just figuring out how to sort of embrace that sentiment and continue that sentiment and the way we all collectively live our lives, I'm hopeful and pretty confident that that's going to continue.
Yeah, and that's so true. I find that when I ask, how are you? You know, it's how in the teams, how are you? And you get fine. How are you? Fine. It's on the third one, you're like, but how are you?
Yeah.
Not so great. So let's see if we have any questions here. I think we'll have a look. Oh, there's a question here for you, Val. Look here. I don't know if you see it.
Yeah, sure. Oh gosh, we have a lot of. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to read it out loud for
please,
those who are on their phone. So question for Val, what are you most excited about 2020? Any initiatives in progress that you can share, more partnerships, etc.?
Yeah, we have a lot of things in the works I'm really excited about. I would be remiss not to call out maybe the biggest one, which is we actually just merged with a company called Ginger. So Headspace is now a part of Headspace Health. And for those who don't know, Ginger is it's a B2B healthcare company that provides, you know, full spectrum mental health care, from you know, digital coaching to teletherapy. And it's something that strategically Headspace has really wanted to do for quite some time now, so that we can provide care along that full continuum. And, you know, when you think about the journey, like we were talking about, it's not just, you know, there's sort of the thriving and the day-to-day maintenance, and then there's real, you know, moments of crisis and need. And there are different mechanisms of treatment or you know, programs that are provided, whether it's through meditation or through therapy. So obviously going to take us some time for us to integrate the product and integrate the brands and the businesses. But I'm really excited strategically about where that's headed in terms of, you know, when we talk about that lifelong mental health journey, we're now, you know, kind of in a category of one, of being able to provide guidance and support throughout that entire journey.
Yeah, it's interesting because we know that there's opportunity there. We know that there's opportunity to grow and to democratize, mental health. I do have a question about B2B. We didn't touch upon that a lot in the fire chat. What do you think? What do you think companies could do differently? How do you think they could be better when it comes to mental health for their employees?
Where can I start? I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot we could all be doing better. One of the things that has given me a lot of hope and optimism over this past year is they seem to really be asking the questions, and so to me, it goes so much farther beyond just like providing headspace to your employee base. Obviously, that's a great start, but it's really living and breathing these principles of whole self and whole health, and encouraging your employees to take a mental health day, like when needed, and how do you train your managers and your leaders on how to embody those principles. And so, like I said, I think we're kind of one tool in the toolkit, but we're also, because of that, fortunate enough to be participating in and driving a lot of conversations with these leaders about what do those solutions look like. So I don't have the answers yet, but I do think there's a real appetite for it. And I do think hopefully there's a role for us to play in figuring out what that looks like beyond just the benefits, the wellness benefits.
I agree. There's another question here. As you're building your team, what functions, talent are you finding the most critical? Are your challenges with recruiting like so many other brands today?
Yeah, I plenty of critical functions in marketing. I think for our business, one that has been really critical is on the media side of things, and specifically talking about that full funnel approach. And because we're digital first, direct to consumer subscription, there are just a lot of nuances that are go into the business and the way you grow the business. Or some of it's app-based, some of it's web-based. And so, finding the right folks who have that pattern recognition for that type of business, and the ability to think about both driving the brand and the awareness side of things while also driving conversion. I think a lot of times you'll get folks who are like excellent at one or the other. Exactly. And being able to bridge the aisle, I think is really critical and has been important. I'd say, fortunately, I've been really lucky in terms of recruiting, and that's where I think the mission serves us so well. Like I said, everyone who's here is here because it means something personal to them. And part of the great accelerator that COVID has been, I think, like myself, or a lot of us, has had us thinking about our careers and thinking about what do you want to spend your time doing every day, and that's shifted a lot of people towards wanting to reorient towards a cause and a company that really aligns with their values, and luckily we're a great attractor from that perspective.
I was muted for a second. A lot of people are asking themselves, what's important to me now? What do I want? And that's these months of slowing down, asking Val to slow down and meditate, that just is bringing people towards that realization.
Yep, for sure.
Oh, there's another one. Oh, no, it's just a message. Wrap. Okay, when I do have another question. I didn't ask this as well. I want to go back to Sesame Street a little bit.
Okay, anytime.
I have to go back to that because I think, you said it as well. There's such an opportunity there with, involving parents and have them educate their children early on. Any other projects in the pipeline to extend that experience and to really focus on parents? I mean, I think through Sesame Street, you've discovered that there's this other segment of the business.
Yeah, for sure. We have a decent amount of content in there as kind of our starter pack for, the parenting and kids section. But we definitely have plans to double down on it. I think we've just had such an incredible response to Sesame that there's so many other directions that we can go. So we'll definitely be building that out. I'm also, I don't think I can tease it quite yet, but there are some other initiatives that are adjacently related on the youth and, making sure we can make ourselves available to kids and teens when they're young and just starting those journeys, that I think we'll probably be announcing in the next couple of weeks, next couple of months.
Excited.
So some exciting stuff going on there, and both in terms of the product offering, but then also in terms of how we're gonna make that available to kids and families.
And how often, Val, does your team get together to think about, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and in terms of opportunities and product development?
We're like in the thick of it right now. I'd say, we'll have like a quarterly cadence
Okay.
for the, maybe like the 1 year horizon, and then the 3 to 5 year horizon is more of an annual exercise that we are very much in the thick of right now. So making sure we're not just solving for tomorrow, but solving beyond.
Oh, that's a great way to end the chat. Not just solving for tomorrow, but solving for beyond. That was great. It's been a real pleasure having you.
It's been so fun. Thanks for the chat.
Yeah, it's great. So let's see if there's any other questions here. We're great.
Awesome.
Hey, Emily.
Hi, sorry about that. We're just bringing me back in there, but thank you so much. That was such a great conversation, and really appreciate you sharing everything that your team is working on, all the exciting things that's going on at Headspace right now. It's great to have you on our stage, Val, and thank you so much, Sandra.
Thanks, Val. Nice to see you again. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you. Good
It's
to
great
see
to
you.
be here.
Guys.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye. All right, everyone. Well, feel free to, grab one more cup of coffee, because we've got 2 more panels left and you won't want to miss them. Definitely a great rest of the day scheduled. So we're really excited for this next panelist. We'll be hearing from Karina Kogan, the CMO of Aura. And this session is going to be moderated by Heath Podvesker, the General Manager for the US at Adverity. So we'll welcome them to our stage shortly. Hi, Karina. How are you?
I'm good. Hi. How's it
Hi.
going?
Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here. Thanks
Is
for
it
the
your
time.
first time speaking on our Brand Innovators stage?
I don't think so, actually. I think I've done it once before.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're a pro then. You already know all the things. So glad to have you back, and really great to have you here, Heath. Looks like you just got on. Lovely background there.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Well, I'll hand it over to you guys. Really excited to hear from you, and I know our audience is as well.
Thank you very much, Emily.
Thank you.
So Karina, first of all, congratulations for shipping Aura Ring 3. It must be a really exciting milestone for you and the team.
Yeah, it's been a big week. We just launched our 3rd generation Aura Ring called the Gen 3 or Generation 3 ring. And it's an incredible feat. We've managed to pack way more features and capabilities into a ring that's still only 4 grams and very slick and beautiful looking. So I'm pretty proud.
Yeah. Building dialogue, I know, is top of mind for all marketers. I imagine there's a specific challenge for Aura where you have to build the dialogue with customers around very sensitive health topics. How is Aura keeping that dialogue authentic, informative, and first and foremost private?
Yeah, and maybe before I even answer that question, I could just tell folks what Aura Ring is and does, just
Please, yeah.
who might not know yet. So Aura Ring, which I'm wearing one right now, is a smart ring that works very similarly to, say, a Fitbit or an Apple Watch. It's a health tracker, and it does all these wonderful things, including tracks your sleep and helps you identify and understand how much sleep you're getting and the quality of the sleep that you're getting, like your deep sleep and your REM sleep. It tracks your heart rate variability during your sleep and gives you essentially a score that helps you understand how rested you are and how ready to tackle the day you might be, depending on your sleep quality. We also just announced now we offer daytime heart rate tracking. We do period prediction for women, so we track your menstrual cycle. We have 7 temperature sensor packed into the little ring, and we use LED lights to essentially be able to read your biometric data and measure your temperature. And as a result of being able to measure your temperature, we're able to help women track their periods and predict their periods. So it's a really powerful tool. It does all these things, and there's new features coming soon, including reading your blood oxygen, and lots of content and guidance to help you leverage your personalized data to make better everyday decisions about your health. So that's what Oura Ring does. Now, to answer your question, I think you were asking about kind of how do we connect with consumers, or how do we engage or talk to consumers about this very complex little product? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a good question, because it is a very sort of innovative product, very high tech product, and a very data rich product. And not all of us are doctors or able to read, data very easily. But the beauty about Oura is the guidance. So in addition to giving you your data and giving you sort of your scores, it breaks down what everything means. It helps guide you, helps you understand kind of how to read your information so that you can actually use that information to make better decisions. For example, it might tell you, oh, it looks like maybe you had a late meal or had some coffee or had a late workout. Maybe, that's, for example, not great for good night's sleep. So Oura is really not just a data tracker, but a great guide to your health. And we bring that to life in our marketing in a lot of ways. One is we obviously show the product and show the UI to consumers so they could see how it works, how the content works, how the product works. We also have an amazing ambassador network. So we have lots of incredible athletes and other folks who use the product and talk about it on social media, folks like Lindsey Vonn, for example. And also we produce a lot of content. We have a blog that breaks down how our product works. And obviously we're pretty active on social media channels like TikTok and Snapchat and Twitter and Instagram, sort of answering questions from our members and potential new members.
That's amazing stuff. I'm curious, is a lot of data flowing to an Oura Ring user or wearer? What are some of the most common use cases? How do they really sort of leverage all that data to make a positive effect on their life?
Yeah, well, we started with sleep. Sleep was sort of the foundation. It was very foundational to Oura in its early days. It's just now we're starting to expand well beyond that. But it is easily one of the most accurate sleep trackers in the world. And so I mentioned, for example, like I wake up in the morning, I look at my app, I look at kind of my sleep throughout the night. I see how many minutes of REM I got, how many minutes of deep sleep I got, or hours, hopefully, of deep sleep I got. And I look at also how that has changed over time. I look at my heart rate variability. For example, I look at what was the lowest point that my resting heart rate was, and when during the night did it get its lowest? And that could tell me the quality of my sleep. And the quality of your sleep is foundational to good health. If you sleep well, you are better prepared to tackle illness. Good sleep is actually prevents illness. It helps you manage your weight. It helps you manage stress. It helps you be more prepared. There's actually been some research that was done by some neuroscientists in Great Britain that showed that stock traders who sleep well and who understand their heart rate and can be sort of attuned to their bodies are actually more successful, have better outcomes, better financial outcomes. So sleep is so foundational, not just to our health, but to our success. As whether it's stockbrokers or parents or whatever, executives.
I was gonna say, I wish someone would deliver this message to my 3-year-old about the benefits, particularly for his parents.
Yeah. But anyway, we started with sleep, and like I said, now we're really we're doing all sorts of fun things with your with helping you understand your data. For example, temperature. We have 7 temperature sensors packed into the ring. And as you know, your body's temperature is actually a signal of whether or not you're ill, you're sick, right? Like we have fevers. Why do we have fevers? We have fevers because it's our body fighting an infection. So what Oura is able to do is actually track the slightest differences in your body temperature over time. And by tracking that, you're able to tell if maybe you're about to get sick even before you have symptoms. Because even before we have a fever, our body temperature goes up. So those are some of the very sort of practical applications of your body's data coming through.
Amazing you pack it all into one tiny package.
Yes. Yes.
A question is, there's a number of wearable devices to track your, call it your health heuristics. Apple Watch probably being one of the most common. How does Oura Ring differ from the competition, and how do you then articulate those differences to consumers via your marketing?
Yeah, a few ways. One is obviously the form factor. We're not a watch, we're a ring. That decision is very purposeful on the part of Oura, in that one, we believe, well, we don't believe, it's just scientific fact that your finger is actually a lot closer to your arteries than the inside of your wrist. So we're reading your biometric data just a little bit closer to the source. And that helps certainly with accuracy. I don't know if you've ever noticed, if you've gone to the hospital or the doctor's office, they often measure through your finger, like oximeters, go on your finger. Yeah, this one. And so that's one reason why we chose the ring. The other thing about an Oura Ring is it doesn't have a screen. It doesn't send you emails. It doesn't send you text messages. It doesn't do anything else other than sit passively and comfortably in the background and measure your biometric data and provide that to you via our app. So it's not distracting. It's really not there to do anything else other than be in the background and be this sort of guide or aid to you when you want it and need it. It also is, I find, a little bit more comfortable, certainly to sleep in and do other activities in than a watch, typing, etc. So the form factor, I think, is incredible. It is a very functional, beautiful piece of jewelry. It looks great with a nice outfit. You can wear it out. You can wear it to work. It's not really just a sort of sports watch. Yeah.
I think there's been a long-term trend to wellness as a topic, but certainly the pandemic has greatly amplified that trend. It's certainly accelerated it in terms of speed, as well as the breadth of people and companies that are really having it top of stack in terms of priority. I'm curious, in terms of Aura's partners, how have you guys been able to sort of leverage partners to be able to sort of expand your reach, to be able to take advantage of this trend?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the pandemic, and I'm guessing it's one of the reasons this is a track at this conference, the pandemic sort of put health and wellness at the forefront of our sort of collective consciousness and made us all sort of kind of really face how existential everything is, right? But with regard to partners, so one thing that happened as a result of the pandemic is a lot of companies and sports teams were looking at health trackers and devices such as Oura Ring as a way to help track the health of their populations. So one way that came to bear with Oura is we partnered with the NBA, with the WNBA, NASCAR, the Sands Casino Group. All of those organizations started to use Oura Rings as a way, like the NBA used it in the bubble, as a way to help track the health and wellness of the players in the bubble. And that's obviously super, super useful when you have a bunch of people in the middle of a pandemic sort of in such proximity. Being able to get the kind of data that Oura brings to you early and often and fast is pretty important.
That's amazing. And you guys are working with other businesses? People probably think of Oura as a B2C company, but clearly you're a B2B company as well.
Yeah. So we have a B2B or an enterprise product called Health Risk Management, HRM, and that's a service or product that we use in a number of partnerships. Like I said, like with the NBA or the casino, the Sands Casino Group, et cetera. And so we're adding new partners every month, every quarter, as people sort of start to understand and realize the power of this tool, and its power not just for individual consumers, but for organizations who really care about the collective or communal health benefits.
Yeah. Good. So switching gears a little bit, getting a little bit more sort of like deeper into marketing. You guys have just launched a new version of your product, really sort of riding the wave of health and wellness. Kind of let's start with the people. as we talked about last week, I get this question quite a bit. Are you guys marketing to millennials or younger differently than you're marketing to other segments or audiences, and how so?
Yeah, I mean, I do. It's not just millennials, but now Gen Z. You know, Gen Z is, I think, 40% of the population, or sorry, 40% of spending. I should say 40% of consumer spending. I think it was by 2020. That's how big Gen Z and powerful Gen Z is. So yeah, as far as millennials and younger, we're definitely, you know, engaging on various platforms that are relevant to younger people. I mean, social media. I mean, I just look at TikTok. Like, my kid could care less about Netflix. He's just on TikTok, you know. And so we're looking at not just those platforms specifically, but what kind of native content or experiences do we need to develop for those platforms so that they feel relevant to those types of consumers. And also you know, younger folks might care about different things. You know, I think we, for the most part, all care about, you know, sleep. But the pandemic, actually, there's been a lot of also research about how young people have experienced a tremendous amount of stress because of the pandemic. And so we might talk about stress with younger folks differently than we talk about stress to, you know, people who are, you know, boomers, for example, right? Maybe boomers are thinking about longevity more than they're thinking about, you know, stress, for example. So we also highlight different features of the product to different audiences based on what we know people care about.
Excellent. That's amazing. You guys have the great advantage of being digitally native, right? And it gives you great flexibility in how you market. You mentioned a lot about influencers, the great skier, Lindsey Vonn being one of them, obviously NBA players wearing your product. I can't help but ask, is influencers and social media the cornerstone of your marketing now with regards to your media strategy, or is it still some more traditional forms of media?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we lean heavily into social and digital platforms, but we most of our campaigns are omni-channel. We've run OTT and linear cable campaigns. We actually are running a commercial now, so we are truly omni-channel in our approach to marketing. You know, with really an always-on approach to digital and social, and a more campaign-focused approach above the line.
Excellent. And how are you thinking about the success of those influencers? Is it online chatter and likes, or are you guys sort of getting a little bit deeper into attributing a level of sales success or top line success to individual influencers?
Yeah, I think it depends on the goals of the individual campaigns. Like there's obviously an incredible value of using influencers to kind of reach new audiences and to build product education with those audiences. And, you know, and so you might measure that in terms of awareness or purchase intent. But for the most part, eventually we track everything down to a CAC, the customer acquisition cost. Nice. So we're pretty kind of focused on, you know, sort of what that cost of acquisition is. Are our marketing initiatives efficient? But I wouldn't say we track every influencer down to their CAC, because each influencer brings a different type of audience or a different sort of value, I think, to the conversation. And so I think we're a little bit more nuanced in our approach there.
Interesting. You mentioned a little bit of OTT and linear. I can't help but asking your overall mix. Are you guys considering more sort of traditional linear TV, or are you also kind of expanding out to things like podcasts and other forms of media?
Yeah, we've done some audio in the past. We're looking at more audio. I think podcasting is a great medium, and I came from television. I worked in cable TV, and obviously I worked at Peloton before Aura, and we were very successful on television there. So I'd love to see us continue to do more on TV. I do think this product, because it's such a sort of innovative, high-tech tool with so many features and capabilities, you kind of do need story forward formats, like a good 30-second spot to tell your story, to unpack the benefits of your product. And so I do like television for that, for sort of that very kind of story forward educational type of format. I think TV is great for not just upper funnel awareness, but sort of education. And so I'd like to see us kind of continue to explore both OTT and television as we go forward. Yeah.
Very cool. Now we're moving into Q4. This holiday season is already proving to be, how shall I say, materially different than the last holiday season. We can leave our houses and go see our friends and our loved ones. We can have holiday parties. We can have Thanksgiving with our family. And now we have supply chain issues. So people are doing all their holiday shopping now versus waiting for the more official cultural kickoff of Black Friday. I'm curious, in kind of gathering data over the course of the year, how have you guys sort of used not just that analytics, but also sort of understanding what's going on in our world around us to kind of change some of your tactics and planning on the fly entering the holiday season?
It's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, every business has been grappling, every physical goods business, obviously in software it's a little different, but is grappling with the sort of global supply chain issues, and it's not just supply chain, it's logistics, right? It's not just manufacturing and parts, but it's actually also getting product on to shore. Obviously it's easier to fly a product than to ship a product on a boat, but it's more expensive. So anyway, we are thinking about kind of, do you dial your holiday campaigns up earlier, remind consumers about shipping cutoffs to the extent that you want consumers to know when they need to shop in order to guarantee that they'll get it by Christmas, for example. So a lot of that thinking is going into our communications plans for this holiday, because we want to be transparent. We want to arm customers with all the data and information that they need to be able to make the best shopping decisions for themselves and not be disappointed, especially if you're gifting something and you want it under the tree by a certain point. Yeah. And we're doing a lot of math on figuring out exactly how much demand, what's in a warehouse, how to get it there quickly. And we actually have also a two-step experience at Aura, in the sense that first you get a sizing kit to measure your finger to find out what size ring you need, and then you get your ring. So we also have to think through the user experience of, like, if I send you a gift and the first thing you get is the ring sizing kit, and then you get the ring, how do you make that like a really fun,
giftable moment?
Moment. Exactly. So there's a lot going into thinking through our holiday.
Right. Now, you mentioned kind of the experience. I think it's really interesting. You get a ring sizing kit. I guess it's kind of exciting, kind of build up to getting your Aura ring. Do you guys do anything else in the unboxing to really kind of carry on that brand experience and to get the people excited about wearing, not just wearing the ring, but also really adopting the apps?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there are actually tons of like YouTube videos and other videos, or on Instagram, there's tons of like unboxing videos of Aura, because it is a piece of jewelry. So let's see if I have it. Sorry, let me show you. Our packaging is really beautiful. So unboxing is very much part of like the excitement and joy of getting an Aura ring, either as a gift or for yourself. And we produce content around that, and we actually produce video also on like how to size and pick your size and what's the optimal finger to wear on, and think through a lot of the process, because you also, by the time you get your ring, you want to make sure that customer knows, like, everything they need to know to get started, right? Right.
That is really, really cool. In terms of actual sort of web experience, I mean, I know there's a lot of things that are happening. Are you sort of working with digital to be able to give people an idea of what that experience is going to be like once they actually have the ring, and how it's going to affect their lives, so they can really kind of do good stuff and develop insights about their own physical plant, and how to kind of make changes differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so much of the job to be done on e-com is about really unpacking all of these features, because I can say to you, hey, Heath, this ring can read your blood oxygen level. And you'd be like, why do I care about that? But if I say to you, hey, Heath, this ring can help you with your sleep apnea, and by reading your blood oxygen levels, you can actually help resolve some of your apnea issues, you're like, okay, now you're leaning in. Maybe you care a little more. If I say to you, this ring measures your body temperature, you're kind of like, why do I care? But if I say it can help you potentially determine whether you might be getting sick even before you have symptoms, now you care. And so it's very much about translating like all this high tech into the why should you care to consumers? Because we're not, you know what I mean? Like a lot of times marketers, we're so proud of our products, but we end up marketing to ourselves because we just like, we talk to ourselves like, to consumers, like we're talking to like in a meeting, right? But breaking it down into why should you care? How will this help you is a big part of our job on throughout the purchase funnel, but especially on e-com.
For sure. And in that experience, a lot of digitally native retailers and or product companies have eventually moved and expanded to having an in-person shopping experience out of their own stores or having some sort of larger form of concession or partnership with a channel partner. You guys plan on doing something like that where I can go to a physical place, get sized up for a ring and go home with one in the same day?
Yeah, we don't have anything to announce today on channel. We are 100% D2C. I think it's an exciting area to explore. I definitely think there's a lot of benefits to touching, feeling, trying on, like people, when they see my ring, they're like, oh, is that heavy? I'm like, no, it's only 4 grams. It's super light because it's titanium coated in gold. So but you don't know that by looking at it. So I do love the idea of us eventually exploring IRL type experiences, including retail, so that consumers can put their hands on the product and sort of reduce any barrier to try. Very
cool. I also want to just say a quick note to our audience. If you have any questions, there should be a Q&A box right in your Zoom. So please feel free to type in questions. We only have a few moments left. So, Karina, I have to ask the obvious and incredibly silly question. Do you have any stories of people using their Oura ring as a wedding band or engagement ring?
Yes, we do. We do have members who either are renewing their vows or getting newly married and want to use the Oura ring. It's like you get good health and good love all in one. I actually think there's a campaign in there somewhere. Maybe we'll run something like that for Valentine's Day.
Good. Well, we have a question here from Henry. What does EMEA expansion and even UK expansion look like for Oura Ring?
Yeah, so we currently are on sale globally, I believe in 70 countries or so. So you could buy an Oura Ring in those markets, in many markets. However, actively being in market. By the way, we're a Finnish company. Our Oura was started in Finland. So kind of Europe has been kind of in many ways home base for a long time. That said, I think we have a long way to go to truly be in market, certainly in EMEA and other places. I forget what the other market that was mentioned. It was the UK in the question. So I do think like there's a difference between like having your e-commerce website available for people to purchase from other countries and shipping to those countries versus truly operating and being in market and being endemic and marketing to those consumers in a way that feels endemic. Right. And that I think is on the horizon certainly next year.
Very cool. Another question is also quite pertinent. So a little off topic, but I think it's relevant for everybody. Hiring these days, really important. Hiring a diverse team is top of stack and more difficult. How have you guys been finding the hiring environment these days, and what have you been doing right to be able to hire a diverse team of women and minorities?
Oh, I think Oura has been doing a really tremendous job in, first of all, I guess because of the pandemic or in spite of I don't know what the right words are there, but we are a very globally distributed workforce. And so we have people all over the country and all over the world. And I think that gives us a leg up in many ways to, that we're not wedded to a sole, headquarters in one office. We really are a very globally distributed workforce. And as a matter of fact, even earlier this week when we were launching the Generation 3 ring, I mean, we were meeting across like so many different time zones. It was bananas, so but it's true. And I think the part that I think innately forces us to be more diverse than a lot of companies because we are so global in nature. But we also are, I think our values as an organization, we really value not just diversity, cultural and ethnic diversity, but thought diversity. I think Aura's values are very much rooted in team spirit and diversity. So far, I mean, I've only been at the company a month, but so far I've been just so impressed with what I see.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the first month has been a new product launch. That's tough.
Yeah, it's fun.
This is not a question, but you did get a compliment, so I'm just going to pass it along. The upgrade program to V3 from V2 was just outstanding and the best customer experience I have received since some experience at Apple, FYI. So,
well, thank you to whoever said that. Thank you so much. I think it should be the mandate of any company to be members first, to become customer first. And I've been so pleased since I've joined Aura to see how committed the team is to just doing right by not just our team, our employees, but our customers. And so I'm glad you felt that love come through.
Nice. A question: you guys have the great advantage of having, a lot of first party and even zero party data. But I'm curious to know is cookie deprecation going to have a material impact on your addressable marketing and media, or is it something that you guys aren't that worried about, because you have so many sort of customers and registered users?
No, I mean, in terms of like prospecting and like new customers, like marketing to new customers, obviously cookie deprecation, the IDFA changes with Apple, all of those changes are going to have an impact not just on Aura, but on any marketing organization. And many marketers are seeing a premium assigned now to things like retargeting. It certainly makes attribution a little harder, things like that. There's definitely some work to be done for us to continue to innovate and think through other ways to keep efficiency in our marketing practice. And by the way, and I will say what it really does, and I think it's good for Aura, is it puts a special premium on having a high quality brand, because branding then starts to matter a lot more. But with regard to our first party data, meaning our member data, that's, like under lock and key, that's your personal data. We don't ever use that and in any way. I mean, other than to give you the service.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Oh, good. So tell me, Karina, what's next? What's next for Aura Ring, whether it be product or marketing or campaigns? That's the good stuff.
So we just obviously launched a new product. So the work that we have to do now, I think, is really to educate consumers on the benefits of the product, how it works, how it's different than what we had before, for people who are aware of the Generation 2 but want to know why we have a Generation 3 and how it's different. We also introduced subscription for the first time in the company's history. We previously did not have a subscription attached to our hardware, but we do now. And so there's some work to be done on kind of, I think, expectations of customers on subscription services is fundamentally a little different than a one-time transaction over, for a piece of hardware. So there's, I think, a lot of work to be done across the board in consumer education, which I think is really fun. If you have product market fit, you do something that I think fundamentally really helps people and brings them joy, then the work is exciting. So I'm looking forward to it, but that's a big part of what we're going to do. And obviously we need to tackle holiday and New Year, New You, because New Year is really an important time, health, wellness, fitness. And then, we'll see. We'll gotta wait. You gotta wait for the press releases.
Yeah, of course. You guys plan on experimenting with any new and interesting media instruments or marketing instruments like digital out of home, working with more like smart TVs or any kind of sort of addressable ads via call it a television set or a set-top box?
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see, I think, a lot more content coming from Aura that is designed to help you use your product, and again, on the education front. And so I do see us experimenting with different ways of delivering that content.
Yep.
Whether that's, you know, through the OTT model, or through or just mobile or social. So yes, and both combination of distribution platforms and formats is something I'm really excited to play with the team, for sure. Yeah.
Very cool. That's amazing stuff.
I still want to crack the nut on longer form storytelling. Like, we keep talking about like the attention deficit economy, and people just like want things in sound bites in 6 seconds and stuff like that. But then people will binge watch like 13 hours of, you know, like what's the show on Netflix that everybody
Ted Lasso would be
Ted Lasso, yeah. I'm like, well, I don't know. You just binge watch like 6 episodes of Ted Lasso. So it's not, you know, so I actually, one thing I'd love to figure out how to do, and it's, you know, it's, I guess this, you know, if I figure it out, I'll let you know. But I do want to find more ways to effectively bring longer form storytelling to advertising. And I'm not sure what that is, because everything seems to just be like really pithy, soundbitey these days, but I'm sure we can crack that nut.
I'm sure you could. Would you ever consider product placement, or
yes,
even working in the gaming community? I can see James Bond working in Aura Ring. It would be very cool.
100%. Somebody today told me actually that there's a show called You on Netflix, where apparently the Aura Ring is prominently featured. I'm gonna watch that now. Just today I found that out, so I'm gonna watch that show. Although I think it's like for like young, you know, for like hip, for our kids. But I'm excited to check that out. But I think the best way to get product placement in, and like I said, I worked in film and television in the past, often is to have a product that's super relevant and a brand that people love and people want to put in their shows. They want to put in their scenes. It's culturally relevant. It's in the zeitgeist. And a lot of that, once you get there, you don't have to pay for the privilege of sticking your product in those stories. And I'd love to be that kind of brand versus the one that pays for that, you know, pays to enter any show. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Karina. Let's see if there's any more questions. I don't see any. I think we've locked it all.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the time.
It's been a pleasure.
And I hope everybody has a happy, healthy, and safe holiday.
Oh, you too, Karina. Thank you very much. Hi, Emily.
Hi. Thank you guys so much. That was awesome. And I'm a fan of the show You, and I definitely recommend watching it. So love the product. So exciting. But yes, I was like, I know what that is, and I definitely saw it in the show. Yeah, you can't pay for that kind of thing. So like that authentic placement just really lands well, which is amazing. So thank you so much for joining us today, Karina and Heath. It was great, and we really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day.
Oh, thank you, Karina. Thank you, Emily.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Well, we are on to our last session of the day. It's been an amazing program with so many great speakers, but this last panel is going to be one of our best. So we actually are doing a panel conversation with 2 marketers. So we'll have Val Fishbane, the co-founder and president of Spread the Love, and Natasha Case, the CEO and co-founder of Cool House, with Alex Kukic, the head of revenue at Within Moderating. So really excited to have these 3 joining us, and looks like they're all popping on right now. Hi, how are you guys?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good. Welcome. Well, really great to have you guys closing out our program today. We're super excited to hear from you. So I also love that both of your headshots have fabulous hats featured. I was like, you guys coordinated this. It looks like it's very lined up, which is awesome. So I'll hand it over to Alex to kick it off.
Absolutely. Thanks, Emily. Really appreciate the opportunity. Ladies, hello. It's nice to formally see each other. I know Natasha has been globetrotting a little bit, so thanks for making the time. And Val had a great conversation.
Anything for you guys.
Yeah, we need it. And Val, it's great to finally connect. So you know,
Nice to see you, Alex.
Yeah, likewise. So,
And I miss you, Natasha.
Miss you too. Let's eat some ice cream.
Just to get started, like, how did you guys meet, and talk a little bit about the relationship that the two of you have personally, and kind of what's going on? I think that'd be a good place for us to start.
We met through a marketing agency. I think she introduced us, Kirsten, shout out.
Kirsten Challenger, yeah.
Yeah, and then, you know, I admire Natasha. I mean, she is like huge in the, you know, CPG world, and especially in Los Angeles. I mean, all over the world. So, you know, I reached out to her and I said, you know, let's do some collab. And very receptive, very helpful. And then, you know, that was like 2 years ago, I think, Natasha. And then, you know, like I reached out to her again, like recently, and I said, I want like a real collab. So let's do it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it's nice to see you both. So, you know, obviously today, lots of discussion in our world with what's been happening around health and wellness, and Val, as you and I talked, also happiness, right? And you can't have the first two. Well, the first two don't matter if you don't have the third, right? So we kind of want to touch a little bit on that. You know, Val, your business, Spread the Love, started on the heels of your wedding. Healthy, small batch, high quality, you know, nut butters and jam business based in LA, as you alluded to. You're in over 80 places around the world. More on that in just a second. And then Natasha, what a cool story. Towing an old mail truck, figuring it out in the middle of the desert. And here we are, and shameless plug. That dough, though, is one of my favorites. We'll talk later about how I can get the strawberry shortcake snickerdoodle because my local grocery stores aren't carrying it. But, you know, great to be here with you both. You know, Val, tell us a little bit more about where you are, what you're up to today, and what you guys are doing.
I am, you know, plugged in here in Los Angeles. I have a lot of visions for the company. I've always wanted to really, our company is very like authentic to ourselves, to me and my husband, you know, to our personalities. You know, it came out of our wedding, you know, from our authentic love for our family and for food. So we gave away jars of peanut butter, you know, and people loved it. And so now, like a lot of like my visions are like, okay, I really want to show my personality and like my heritage in my company. And so we're doing a lot of, you know, collaborations with Filipino American food businesses. And, you know, Natasha Cool House is co-founded by a Filipino American, and Natasha really wanted to honor that. And so, you know, we work with them in other restaurants all over LA, and it's been great. We were on Good Day LA yesterday promoting our ice cream that we created with Cool House. It's called Tyrannosaurus Almond Butter.
Nice. Awesome. Well, hopefully that can make it all the way over to where I am in Maryland. That would be amazing. And then Natasha, so we know who got the first nut butters that Val made. They were her wedding friends who got them as a gift. Who got the first ice cream sandwich? And then when did the light bulb go off? And talk to us about that moment and to where you are today.
I think, you know, the very first products, and this is, I think, what's important about entrepreneurship. We really, you know, started kind of creating the ice cream sandwiches, you know, in Freya's mom's kitchen, and at our house. I guess we were both kind of living at home, and Freya and I were subletting somewhere, so we made it there, my parents' house, and we really just sort of gave them to friends and family to start with, to get a sense of what they thought about the product. And then I also really wanted to help lighten the mood. Kind of in the early days of the Great Recession, when I was working at Disney Imagineering, with a lot of just the tense atmosphere around the office, and kind of a lot of stressful moments, a lot of layoffs, handing them out also to colleagues to just make them feel better. Ice cream's just one of the ultimate comfort foods, and there's just so much emotion wrapped in it. So those early sandwiches that had a lot of room for improvement. And I think it was good to get early feedback, you know, from people who are willing to be honest with you. Especially kids will be very, very honest with you. Sometimes your friends or family won't, because they don't want to make you feel bad. But there was a whole kind of months and months of just testing it out and trying to figure out what we were doing and try to even understand the product.
And I think it's funny to share that in common with Val and Zach, is that you kind of start in this very intimate circle. And, you know, I think your friends now, I'm sure they all remember this like very humble beginning, and I'm sure have stories to tell about it. And then they see it grow and there's like an attachment to it. But then, yeah, the first sandwiches we really sold were at Coachella Music Festival. So we went from tiny group of incubating the product, trying to understand it, and just making in like a home kitchen, to a festival of 100,000 people in the desert, you know. So just a little, like, I think sort of exemplifies the Cool House spirit. We sort of go big or go home, and we're willing to just sort of, you know, step into the fire and try to, you know, see what happens. And yeah, we really, there was a cult following at Coachella after those 3 or 4 days, and the product really went, the brand and the product really went viral from there. So we knew we were onto something, and that was really like, okay, we got to keep going. People want this. There's excitement. Let's take this to the next level.
Yeah, and I think both of you can attest to a good old moniker in marketing, that the best marketing is a great product, which both of you certainly seem to have. So congratulations on that endeavor. Getting back to what we're here to talk about today from a health and wellness perspective, you guys, you know, are making sweet treats that are delicious, right? So, you know, Val, we touched on this a little bit. You know, what does health and wellness mean to you, and like, how do you look at your products and where that can go? Before the one thing that sticks out to me is, you know, you turn that peanut butter jar around and you're wondering why there are 6 ingredients in there. Could you kind of cascade that a little bit? I loved what you had to say. I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, well, so I came from the Philippines originally. I came here when I was 14, and I think living in the Philippines, I just ate a lot of like home cooked meals, you know, so not a lot of like, you know, jars or canned foods. And so when I was looking at Zach, my husband and co-founder, when I was looking at his jar of peanut butter, I was like, hydrogenated oils, sugar. Why is there 6 ingredients in this jar? No wonder I don't like it, you know? And I had just recently gotten a Vitamix blender back then. So I was like, well, let me just blend peanuts. And, you know, to me, that was like very, you know, I'm going to go back to that word, authentic, to my lifestyle. I wanted to see what I can do with the food and how I can make it better for myself. A lot of it also, health and wellness is like very intuitive, you know? So if you're like aware of your family's health history, for example, like for me, like diabetes runs in my family, like I tend to like, I'm not afraid of sugar, but I tend to like, okay, cool. Well, I ate a lot of ice cream yesterday, so I think I'm gonna skip today and then like eat ice cream again tomorrow. You know, like I just have like a set like lifestyle of like what I can and can't eat. And I think, you know, having that is also good for my mental health. I'm not like restraining myself. Oh my God, I can't have wine. You know, I've had too much of it like in the week. And I'm like, no, you know what? I deserve it. I'm a mom and I work hard and I'm going to do it, you know, and it feels better that way, you know?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, right? Like it's not the same thing for everyone. You know, there's a way to look at it, and everybody has their own perspective. You know, Natasha, from where you sit, we've talked a little bit about what's going on in the space, right? And the alternatives that are out there. Another, you know, company that's, you know, blown up is, you know, plant-based, you know, meat products that are everywhere from grocery store shelves to Burger King and in between. Can you guys talk to us a little bit about what's going on and what you guys are doing in your lab kitchens and some of the tests you're doing with some of the alternatives, particularly in the plant-based space?
Yeah, we have a lot going on there. And I think there's it's the fastest growing part of the market at Whole Foods, for example, which is really our biggest partner. It's the biggest seller and the fastest growing and the fastest mover. It's become a dominant part of the set that we have there. And I think there's a lot that can happen in plant-based. Where we've started is creating an alternative, you know, to the ice cream base made from peas, brown rice, cocoa butter, with the goal in mind that there's no compromise in the eating experience, and that's texture, that's visual, that's uniqueness of flavors that you can build, quality, creaminess. And I would never have launched it if I didn't feel we could do that. And so that's coming from, you know, plants more in the traditional sense, you know, a legume, and that rice and that cocoa butter really to create that richness. But there's, I think, amazing, potential breakthrough in, like lab grown. I think that dairy, you're seeing a lot of innovation kind of following what was happening in the meat-based, the cell-based meats, really trying to make ourselves not be so dependent on animals, at the end of the day, for having a delicious eating experience. I really think is going to be a huge, huge part of the future. And I think we have to come at it from all these different angles for it to work. So, right now we're exploring multiple different angles. And I think we can all continue to eat great things if we're willing to be more kind of responsible about those choices, or at least have more moderation behind those choices. And build a system that's like truly sustainable for us to stay on the planet and keep feeding our children and their children, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm really excited about that. And we're really working on bringing that into new formats. Like we have our cones and our sandwiches that are been really big for us.
Awesome. I think that makes a ton of sense. A little bit, one of the other things that, I'd love to unpack with you, you both come from very proud communities with the connection to the Filipino lineage that you also have. And then some of the other communities that you guys are involved with and support. Can you talk a little bit about what your brands have done and the impact that you've had in the space on others outside of those that just, consume your product directly? What does it mean to the brand? What is the responsibility, Natasha, that you alluded to, that you feel now with the success that you've had to give back and to, shed a light on, some of the inequalities and some of the things that have happened on the folks that, represent, consume or even work for you guys at Cool House? Can you talk to us a little bit about some of those initiatives and what you guys are proud of and working on?
Yeah.
Nothing ever is perfect on webinars. Val, while we see if she can come back around, because I'm guessing that it's just maybe you and me that
like a true connection. Am I frozen still? Better?
You're frozen. You're back now though. So yeah, keep going.
Okay. Using a platform for positive change, I think is really important, and really defining that in an authentic way. And for me, founding this business with Freya, as queer woman, Freya as a woman of color, feeling like you're definitely some steps behind, and what can we do to make it more equal for the next generation, so that everyone's starting from an equal place with an equal opportunity. And that's for us, that's mentorship, that's public speaking, that's raising awareness, that's practicing what you preach. If you want to create more diverse workplaces, then yours needs to be also. And even within that diversity, is it really equal? Do people from diverse backgrounds have the same opportunity as some of the others? And so we really leaned in there. And then I think really using the product as that platform. So like we've created flavors like we did for Black Girl Ventures, where we partnered with them to create a carrot cake ice cream, and the proceeds from profits go to one of their grants for their entrepreneurs. And it's like an incubator for Black and brown female founders. And we pitched that everywhere from Walmart to, Kroger. So I think if you can have a delicious product that's fun, and you can have a meaningful message, and you can bring it all together, it's like, what's not to love?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's amazing. And I think it's certainly more relevant now than ever before. Quick one more to piggyback on that, like, not to get too sappy on you, but like, how does that make you feel, like knowing that you're having an impact, that you're placing a product that is in one of the biggest retailers on the planet, and that those funds go directly towards something that means so much to you? Can you elaborate on that just briefly?
Well, I think from like one's own perspective, I think if you really want to be committed to the work you're doing, and you want to be into it, it's like, if you have to have purpose, like feeling like the work you do has a purpose. Just you show up so differently every day. And I think, Val's the same way. I think also as like a mom, it's like you're gonna, have your family, but you're gonna spend so much time doing something you're so passionate about, ice cream and, nut butters. When there's something bigger behind it, I think it just all fits together so much better. Because you're not just selling something, you're really trying to make a change, and stand for something, and have that purpose behind the work that you're doing. And that can be a million different things, but just that sense of purpose is so important. And I ultimately think it's more exciting for consumers too. Like they want to feel like the purchases they're making have a purpose behind them as well. So really everybody wins if everyone's contributing to that. And then ultimately you can create an opportunity for someone who maybe didn't have it before to start a business and grow their business. It's just the most rewarding thing I can imagine.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. You know, Val, how about you from your perspective? You know, you're pretty entrenched in the communities that you're in. Can you talk to us a little bit about, you know, some of those purpose and very intentional things that you guys are doing and what it means to you and what you're working on?
Yeah, you know, about like, I think something like 3 years ago, I was thinking about something, you know, to do with our company that I can give back, you know, without like making it feel like I'm forcing it, you know. So I literally like walk outside and here in Los Angeles, and you just see like the homeless population is just, it's huge right now. And so during that time, I said, hey, you know, why don't we give back to the community that is here right in front of us? And so that's something that, you know, we are doing consistently every year. We are giving back to the homeless organizations here in Los Angeles, which kind of like snowballed into something else. Zach wanted to also give back to his original community, like in Wisconsin. So we also do scholarships. We provide scholarships to high school students in Wisconsin. We provided 3 scholarships last year, and then 5 scholarships this year. And then one of our big goals is to eventually provide like $100,000 worth of scholarships to high school students, which is, you know, our future. So that's something that we're doing here at Spread the Love, and it's very, you know, very us. It is, you know, like Los Angeles and Wisconsin, where Zach is from, and it makes our hearts grow bigger. You know, it really does help when there's a purpose behind your company. I could cry with, you know, what Natasha is doing with her company because it's so good. And we are we're benefiting from it because Natasha's, you know, really receptive to, you know, the idea of like, hey, you know, let's work with Filipino American businesses, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when it comes to that, right, you guys are able to, you know, share a special connection. And Natasha, it comes from the growth that you have, right? And, you know, just a candid question. When you guys got started, did you ever think that you would get, you know, quite to the point where you are today? Like, was that ever a thought that you'd actually be in as many retailers and as many, you know, sections as you are? And, you know, not only that, but how do you scale and keep those values? Because I'm sure at one point, you know, it was the 2 of you, and then there were 3, and then there were 5, and, you know, there are so many more people along. Like, how do you do that in an intentional way, but keep those values grounded in the people that are on, around, and support your brand and your business, and provide the very opportunity that Val alluded to when you're able to give back to this community? So I'd love to hear more on that.
Yeah, I think, well, first, I think you have to have a big vision in a lot of ways. And I think I did. And I think Fran and I did have a big idea of what we were onto in terms, you know, well, it just felt like something big. You just could feel the kind of energy in the room of the idea. You know, the ice cream sandwiches, the truck, the moment with kind of like social media at the time, people caring about food differently, people wanting to eat differently. There were so many, it was like, I was like, this is a really big idea, but I don't think I had the words or the understanding to know exactly what that might look like in the detailed way that I do. Chip away at what kind of putting that all together. So I do tell people, like, the more you can visual and for yourself. And I think women, we don't do this enough. Like, what does this mean for me? Will I be satisfied? Will I be paid enough? This moment too. Think about 2, 5, 10 years, etc. But I'm like, whoa, like, I can't believe this is this like quirky idea of the architecture ice cream.
Right.
work on this quirky idea, and it's pretty like breathtaking and humbling. And I think you have to stay that way. And I think you have to check to find the values. I think people need to hear things 10, 11, 12, 13 times. You know, as a leader, you think, oh, I told them that. It's almost easier to do it now because it takes more time to kind of refine what those values are.
Right.
You have more skill as a leader to take the time to sit with your team, to, you know, have a round table. So it's like going to be messy in the beginning, and that's just the way it is. But then you kind of get above, you know, come up for air, and I think you can start to work on the business, not just.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think that's a pretty powerful statement. You know, on the flip side of that, Val, your longest standing coworker.
Yes.
Zach, your husband,
yes.
right?
Yes, that handsome demon.
How do you guys balance being business partners, parents, entrepreneurs, co-workers? Like, talk to us a little bit about that dynamic. You know, transparently, my wife and I collaborate on a business that we have, and I know firsthand that it's not easy, and, you know, sometimes, you know, mountains are molehills and molehills are mountains. But talk to us a little bit about what that's been like from a health and wellness perspective with you and Zach, and how you guys, you know, create the appropriate boundaries within that work environment to make sure that you can keep having that consistent approach day in and day out, right?
Yeah. We definitely have boundaries. He works in one department and I work in another. Like, we tend to like kind of not be on each other's business. You know, whenever it's like marketing or, you know, press involved, he tends to like not touch it too much because he knows that I'm gonna growl at him and like, hey, stay in your lane, you know, kind of thing. So we know each other's lanes, and we tend to stay in that. And then every Thursdays we have date nights, because it's a way for us to kind of, you know, look at each other like husband and wife again, or a boyfriend and girlfriend, you know, like, let's talk about like things that we don't usually talk about, like at Spread the Love or with our kids. You know, we end up like talking about our kids a lot at date night, but, you know, we asked each other like some new questions, and it's something I think that is, you know, healthy for our relationship. I'm really thankful that someone gave that advice one time, and now that we're following it, we've been following it for 5 years. And yeah, I you know, it's been a pleasure to work with my husband, to be honest. So.
That's awesome. What, if any, involvement do your kids have in what you guys are building?
Oh my gosh, they have crazy ideas. There was one idea that my daughter has. When she was 4 years old, she said, "Mommy, I want to put some peanuts in the ground and help you, you know, produce peanut butter, you know, basically like planting peanuts." And we turned that into a commercial, and it was very touching. And, you know, like the whole family was involved, and they just have like these crazy ideas that we're like, oh, okay, we'll make a book one day, you know, about Spread the Love. And, you know, so we make a list of it. I mean, I feel like, yeah, they inspire us, obviously, you know, with the company. Yeah.
Nice. I think that's very cool. Another question for you. You talked about, you know, your connection with food a lot growing up. You know, with where you guys are today and where you're headed, right? What more do you think there will be, or I guess a better way to say it is, you know, how do you continue to ensure your connectivity with food and whole foods and healthy and well living? Like, how do you ensure that continues on, you know, and that people are kind of using and consuming your product in the same way that you intended for? So I guess, you know, said another way, what's kind of next for you guys? Is there, you know, a different product suite or anything that you're looking to branch out? Or are there more collaborations on the horizon to continue to spread and put your product in places that you know will get you back to what got you started, which is that community aspect and that family aspect around, you know, food?
The category that we're in, nuts and seeds, butters, it's endless, right? There's just so much that we want to do. We want to venture out into, allergen free, spreads. We definitely want to consider everyone. We want to venture out into some like cheeses, just like foods that we love, eventually, like, I don't know, oils. It really, we have a big imagination, and, we are our own bosses, so we can really like do anything that we want to do. And, that makes me want to like wake up every day and like want to work.
Yeah, which is really awesome. We have about 10 minutes left, so just a quick reminder to the folks that are on the call, drop some questions in the Q&A. Taking it a little bit, outside, of the realm of us and inspirations and things like that. Natasha, I'd love to come back to you. Can you talk a little bit about, what you guys are able to provide from a health and wellness perspective of the employees that you currently have at Cool House, and some of the initiatives you're doing there? I think, one of the things that within that I think we do, which is amazing, is we offer a mental health stipend, $150 a month. We also offer a physical health stipend, which is coming back now that you're kind of where we are versus where we've been over the last year. Is there anything that you guys are doing for your employees on that front, that you think is cool or is worth sharing? Because there's certainly a ton of other marketers on the phone that would love to take some ideas if you have anything that you can think of. Don't know. All right, perhaps we've lost her. We're back to a connection challenge. Val, come back to you for a quick second on a similar kind of concept there, right?
Yeah.
With you guys, what's important in that same capacity for your employees? How are you able, to reward them? Looks like we got Natasha back, so that's a plus. Is there anything that you're doing? Nothing's easy. Is there anything you're doing on that front for your employees from a health and wellness, particularly a mental or physical? Natasha, I'd love to hear more from you, since we've been hearing from Val a little bit now that you're back and you've joined us.
Yeah. I think one thing that's been great coming out of COVID is we do summer Fridays, which have now become fall Fridays, which will become winter Fridays. So I think my philosophy is, it's all about getting the job done. And I'm not a big stickler for, this hour at this place, and you need to do it this way. It's like, if you are getting it done and you can really tell, then that's what matters to me. And I think, to have, I actually don't know why we just all think we need 5 work days and 2 weekend days. Every time I have a long weekend, I'm like, oh my God, it's just like, it's like night and day. And I see with my kids too, like if they have a day off from school, like Remy wants to go to school so badly the next day, and sometimes she's just not ready after the weekend. So I think it's human nature. And I think that if you can't necessarily always give people raises, if you can give them a better work experience and give them the trust to get it done, on a more flexible schedule. I have found that to be like a perk that my team's really, really loved. And then we just try to have fun together. We're not in the office every day. So when we are, I feel like we're constantly doing happy hours and lunches that are trying to celebrate something or some cool activity. And it's just so good to get to know each other and feel like a family. And of course, we have healthcare, and I have, dental and eye care. And I think as far as the mental health, I don't know. I think mental health care in this country is very, very far from where it needs to be. And I wish it was treated more like physical health care. But I think in the meantime, as a leader, you have to listen, and you have to make sure people are okay, and you have to make them feel safe to talk about it if they're not. So just creating that environment for them to do that, and having empathy and being sensitive, and at the very minimum, I think that's really important. And I think people will tell you if they feel safe to be that way, and that's really important to me. So those are some of the, other than eating ice cream all day, those are some of the big perks for working at Glass.
Yeah, I would say that would probably be my favorite, without a doubt. Val, how about you from your side? Is there anything, on the employee spectrum of health and wellness?
Yeah, we have a very small and mighty team, but we do provide health insurance and $50 a month for mental health, $45 a month for Peloton app, whoever has a Peloton, we all have Pelotons. Just open communication, really. Like if someone in our team is going through something difficult in their lives, like we tend to just tell them, hey, take the day off. We have unlimited paid time off because we're small, and we can do it. So yeah, those are just a few of the perks.
Nice, which is amazing. I have one more question for each of you here, and then we'll work towards wrapping. And if we get anything that comes over the line for Q&A, we'll certainly dive into that. Val, we'll start with you, and we'll end with Natasha. You're growing, you're all over the place now in terms of where your product is, right? Kind of what's next for the business, and how do you grow that way, responsibly, and what are some of the, mission critical elements of your business that you absolutely cannot lose? And what are you going to do to make sure that you maintain them?
Definitely, we cannot add palm oil to our nut butters and jams. That's one of the things that, that we really cannot change at all. But yeah, in about, we haven't really entertained any investors, to come in. So that's something that we're looking forward to doing eventually, some strategic investors that will put our good products out there. We know that, our products are so good and premium, and it needs to really, get out there. And because we're a small and mighty team, we think that a strategic investor could help us do that. Yeah, we have a lot of big dreams, and currently I really want to collaborate more with a lot of the brands that I admire. Actually, Natasha, Cool House is the first one that I ever collaborated with, so there's more to come.
Awesome.
I'm excited for those other brands that get to collab with you, Val.
Nice.
You guys really are you're so passionate, and you go all in, so it's awesome.
Natasha, is the same from you with where you are, right? What's next for you guys? What's the next, checkpoint, the next goal, right? Obviously you want to keep maintaining, the communal aspect that you shared with us earlier, today, but talk to us a little bit about what's next for you guys and where you see yourselves going.
Yeah, I think we're actually in a really interesting moment with a big strategic investment that will really allow us to, I think, just catapult a lot more with the plant-based, but really also getting the awareness out about what we're doing. Our marketing team's still super small. It's really, me and I have an amazing social media manager, but she's actually, she's out, contractors, and I've been at the company internally, and that's really it. A big part of our marketing is our events business, our activations, our partnerships, the catering, and the retail shop. But it's going to be amazing to really, I think we've worked hard to create what we have, and I think the next stage is really just growing a huge amount of the awareness for it, and then continuing to innovate, doing probably one more big product line. Like, we have the cones and the Sammys as the major and novelties, but I'd like to do one more potentially bite size. And then continue to do partnerships that are meaningful, that give back, and that bring that sense of purpose to the brand and the people who work there. So yeah, I'm really excited about it, and lead the best I can, and take it to the next level.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. And thanks to both of you ladies for just a, awesome, session today, just kind of pulling back the curtain and sharing some things so candidly. And congratulations to you both on your successes. Really appreciate it. I have one question that's come in, it kind of a basic one here. And it's actually from a colleague of mine, so it doesn't show up in the chat, so they're cheating. So they just said, as women leaders and as female leaders, what is the main thing, that you look to junior staff members or people that, have an idea and want to get out and get started? Val, I'll take it over to you. Love to know what your answer is and to know, what guidance you would share for somebody who's thinking about doing something, but, hasn't quite made the leap yet.
Stop thinking and just do it. Literally. I mean, just the action speaks louder than words. I know how cheesy that sounds, but it is very true.
Cool. Tasha?
Yeah, I think, and I think you can take a calculated risk. I think that you can have a big idea and you can get it started. It doesn't mean that you have to abandon everything else that you're doing. I think Val and I are testaments to like something started when we both had other things going on. We didn't quit everything and then be like, okay, this is it now. So there's nothing stopping you from at least trying something on the side. And just make it happen and learn from it and have something to go off of rather than just, analysis paralysis. And I think think of it to the biggest degree possible and what that would look like. Take it all as an exercise, take it all the way through. And what is the biggest possible scenario you can have, I'm just a very big person on if you build it, they will come. You have to have the words on the paper to really know that they can happen and hold yourself accountable and to those dreams and the people around you to those dreams. So yeah.
Nice. Awesome. I think that's great advice and really, really awesome and really appreciate it from both of you. So thank you very much for the time. And more importantly, this has been great. I've enjoyed it personally. So thank you for sharing everything and look forward to touching base with you both in person here in the not so distant future. And thanks for carving out. I know you're both busy, so I appreciate it. And back to Emily.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. That was a great way to end it off. And we so appreciate you joining us. So thanks so much and hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Hope to have you back soon.
Thank you. You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Well, a huge thank you to all of our speakers throughout the day, especially that last amazing panel we got to hear from. Such a great program all about health and wellness. And we hope all of you had a great time tuning in and hearing from these marketers. Hope to have you join us again for our next Brand Innovators Livecast, which will be next Tuesday, November 2nd, all on the future of CPG marketing. We have some incredible brands, Mondelez, Pepsi, Kellogg's, Molson Coors, Constellation. So all the major players. So it's going to be a really incredible day. So we hope to see you all again then. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.